Stream's rolling. I will check it. It says you're live. This is your right ear and your left ear. I can hear it. I'm happy with that. Okie dokie. I've been off a little bit this week. This is the schedule that we're supposed to keep. Oh, we're supposed to keep it. Oh no. Well, yesterday was my day off. We did do this on Monday. We're back. We're back. I didn't do a charity stream in the daytime today. Instead, we did this now. We're doing this now. Still feeling a little bit under the weather from the COVID. Still feeling a little bit. I don't want to bang on about it, but it's getting to the final bit where it's just like blowing my nose a lot and feeling a bit rough and that's not particularly good for streaming, but I'm pushing it. Let's go, let's go, because next time, tomorrow, daytime YouTube stream, then the weekend, and then on Sunday it's my 2-year streaming anniversary. Yay! So I thought we'd do a little something nice, maybe on YouTube, maybe on Twitch, and then we're back on next week, and hopefully by the week after I can say we get a guest in, because I need to be clear of COVID, not testing positive, clear of it, clean the house down for getting a guest in, but hopefully we can start getting those damn guests in. I don't want it to be a never thing for that. I really want to start getting that done. Anywho, we're on today, the Super Chuffer channel. There's no place like home. Shelley, there's no place like home. My favourite homeschooler.
I believe to be the 3 most common and untrue homeschool myths.
So she teaches her kids at home. The reason she's my favourite homeschooler is because she thinks some interesting stuff and she teaches it to her kids. For example, her latest video is question the narrative, gap theory. Did elves and fairies exist? She's not saying they did, she's questioning the narrative, which you should do, because the narrative is that they didn't exist, and you might want to teach your children that they did. For example, was this a giant tree? Part 1 and part 2 on Nature Trail. Is this a giant footprint? No, it's an advert, and I'm not paying for Google Prime, YouTube special, until we've got a lot more money rolling in, because I'll tell you something, hello Uncontrolled Historian, it's alive. Your husband sneezed 17 times today. His record is 26 sneezes. I just shout, shut up. I've been doing a little bit of it, yeah. I don't want to bring it to camera and be like, I can still feel it in my nose right now.
Before, and I kind of said it jokingly, but now that I see all of the evidence between the man-made mountains and the huge trees and what definitely looks to me like a giant footprint. To
me, that doesn't look like a giant footprint. To me, that looks like some sort of culvert. I think they call them in America a culvert. It looks like some sort of water has flown through here. And maybe even someone has dug out a trough at this bottom end, maybe to feed an animal, or maybe to have a ready supply of water at some stage, or maybe to alleviate some water flow somewhere else in this area. I don't know much about the landscape, can't see the wider picture, but it looks like water has flown through here. It could have even been a natural occurring spring or build-up of water from somewhere that has flown through, and that's what's caused this erosion in the soil here. Maybe it was a higher pool and then someone's knocked it through here and it's come down into this lower trough. That's what it looks like to me, but Shelley's convinced this is a giant footprint.
Better pictures from when it's not so overgrown, but Ireland, can you go in there and just point out?
She accidentally said her daughter's name on the internet there. Sorry about that, everyone.
No, it's okay. I'll hold the camera. You just... So, tell them what you see in there. So that looks like what would be the heel.
Bear in mind, this is her mother, her teacher, and only guide.
Show them where the heel would be.
Heel, and then this is the instep, foot, and then
like the instep. Go up to the big toe. Can you go up?
And that's the big... I see what you mean. It's almost in the shape of a footprint, isn't it? In a way, almost. A big worry to me. I don't really mind what Shelley thinks. I think it's funny that she makes her videos on the internet, but a big worry to me is that she's teaching it to her children. I mean, it's almost like fairy stories. Oh, the mountain was made by giants, and when you grow up and you learn about geology, it kind of goes by the wayside. But it was nice to think, wasn't it, that fairy story when you were little? So maybe we could put it in that ballpark. Talking of fairy stories.
There's so many homeschooling myths. I'm not going to address all of them because I could be here all day, because some of them are doozies.
So I'm not going to address everything either, because some of it is going to take us all day. But what I wanted to do, I've got the calm, relaxing music in the background here from 2022. We've got her channel itself, her latest video, and I've got an hour or two. Let's try and question the narrative. Did elves and fairies exist? it's a 28-minute video.
Going to.
So I hope to let it run a bit, because usually I do a pause every 10 seconds and I take hours and hours. I'm hoping to do another react later on tonight on Twitch about Genshin Impact. So, although I have given that its own channel now, everyone, thank you very much. Genshin Impact's got its own Ganji Impact channel, so you're not going to see any more Genshin Impact uploads over here on Super Chuffer. You're just going to get the raw from the... Raw... I want to rhyme it with raw, but I can't think of anything. Raw from the score? Raw from the mine. Mine doesn't rhyme with... Anyway, you're just going to get it raw. So let's go.
Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another Question the Narrative video today. And today's video, I'm going to be pretty ambitious and I'm going to try to cover giants, trolls, fairy folk, and the gap theory.
Right, that's a lot of stuff. Giants, trolls, fairy folk, and the gap theory. It worries me that even if you are teaching your children nonsense at home, you're not even doing a very good job of that, because you'd probably want to just focus on one of those things. Giants, trolls, fairy folk, and maybe the gap theory comes into it, you know, while you're discussing these other... But if I were you, I'd go for the bigger overview and move your way in steadily. Or maybe start with something quite detailed, actually, and then start stepping back and adding on to it as you step back. We'll see.
Because yes, I am going to try to link them all together. If you hear a little gurgling in the background, that is just me making coffee, because I have a feeling that I'm going to need it sometime during this.
I made a coffee. You might want to get one too. Nice cup of... I've got decaf coffee, and it tastes like shit. I shouldn't swear anymore. I really have to cut that out. YouTube's doing a hardcore... YouTube is cut back on naughty stuff. So swearing, all sorts. My videos get some watches, and then they go flatten off. And I noticed it's the same curve as people who get demonetized. I don't get demonetized. I'm not even monetized, but it doesn't say advertiser not friendly. My videos are fine, but it still gets the flat line, so I need to watch it. Himself's a real life troll. He's been working under a medieval bridge, repointing. Oh, I love a bit of pointing. Do you know what? I won't get distracted too much, but I'll just quickly, for anyone that doesn't know, pointing brickwork. This is, I mean, I'm not huge on it, but my dad was a roofer, bricklayer, tiler, working man of that description. Is that? And one of my lessons when I did some Joey work for his... I mean, look at that. That looks awful. Hang on. Now we're getting me into pointing 101. The bit on the right is fucking awful. Look at that. It looks like someone's put their bum up against the wall and squeezed out a big poop all along it. That's not how you do it. That is horrific pointing. On the left, much neater. But you see there's this sort of smooth indent along the lock. The pointing is the bit of the brickwork where the cement is in the middle. So you put your bricks on, and then along the edge, when you've done your wall, you fill it in, don't you? Like, you fill it in with a little bit of cement. On this here, it's this natural mistake that everyone makes, is to just put, almost like you put your thumb along it and then drag it along, and it leaves an indent. It's nice and neat, but actually what you want your pointing to do is to slope from top to bottom, because the water wants to drain off. That indent is going to encourage the water to sit in the indent, and then when it freezes, it might cause problems. You want the water to slope, but pointing should be slightly sloped from top to bottom. But there are loads of different kinds of pointing. So one of the days, my dad had me out in, like, this is the truth as well. One of the days, in like the daytime, like, what you want to do when you're around your dad's house? Do you want to play on your Nintendo? No, it's not round your dad's house. So what are we going to do then? Why don't you go out the back? Here's a hammer and chisel. I want you to knock all the pointing out of that wall. And then this afternoon, what we're going to do is we're going to refill it. And I was like, what? And he taught me different kinds of pointing on the back wall. Chipped it all out with a hammer and chisel. Refilled it with cement as an activity. But yeah, pointing on the wall. And like you were saying in chat there, historian, working under a medieval bridge, I bet there's some really serious and interesting pointing going on a medieval bridge, because there'd be grade 2 listed. We've got the system in the UK where things that are really, really old, like medieval bridges, and it will come into what we're talking about today with the question, the narrative stuff, because we've got actual medieval bridges. Let's have a look at one. Medieval bridge UK. What we have in the UK is we have these rules where you have to keep things as they were. So I'm just going to pick, there's quite a few nice looking pictures here of medieval bridges. People would be surprised. They would be surprised that some of these bridges that they see in frequent use still in the UK might actually be as old as medieval. Okay, it's one of those things like the sweeping brush, I put a new head on it, a new handle, and is it the same brush? It's one of those sort of things. But they redo the brickwork and the cement inside the brickwork, don't they? And that's the pointing there. But they don't just do it willy-nilly. They have a bit of a system, because we have this system of listing in the UK where things that are very old, they go on the list and you keep them as they are. So when you replace a stone, for example, you can see some of these stones here have been replaced, but they replaced them with a very similar, if not the same, sort of stone in the same way. So it stays the same, like the brush. They don't just say, right, forget it, we'll just use some bricks and modern techniques. You can have some modern techniques because you want it to be structurally sound, but otherwise, if you've got old windows in your old house, you might not be able to just change them for double glazing. I know it sounds loopy. Maybe there's a workaround in the law for that. But I worked in an old building and had a lot of old fixtures and fittings that would, I think you can change the sink, but you can't change the brickwork on the exterior sort of thing, So that's actually interesting to think about that before we get into this. It fits in, so I went there. Bit of pointing.
Because I'm being a little bit more ambitious than I usually am, because I have had so many.
Uncontrolled Historian says, you're in a grade 2 listed building, it's a total mare. There are pros and cons, aren't there? There's a lot of beauty and character, but God help you should you want to do anything to your own property to make it slightly better than it was millions of years ago. Not millions, I should be correct. Medieval, I'll just pick medieval as an example. Medieval, we're talking specifically quite generally about the Middle Ages. So that would be, and we are today talking about this, and I've already gotten on a tangent, but this is a proper tangent that includes it. I suppose 1469 to first recorded in 1625 was the first recorded use of it, and it should tell us when it refers to it. Let me just do it in a quick ask Google. What time period of medieval? The Middle Ages or the Dark Ages began around 476 AD, following a great loss of power throughout Europe by the Roman Emperor. The Middle Ages span roughly 1,000 years, ending between 1400 and 1450. And this is part of this, what they think is like missing history or fake history. The reason they think it's missing or fake history in the conspiracy lot is because we've seen, just quickly here, there was a fall in power. The great intercontinental power of Rome fell. And so things went a bit dark. They call it the Dark Ages because things weren't as organised and going as well. People weren't writing as many books and having as much fun. But I keep going back to this relaxing game music by mistake, but it also relaxes me, that window. So let's push on. Your house was built in 1839 on the site of a medieval thatch, mud and stud. See, knowing about these things gives you a bit of an advantage over someone like Shelley, who has no concept before she gets into starting wandering around the woods and telling us that they're giant footprints.
These thoughts running through my mind, and then when I get these fantastic comments from all of you that really give me even more to think about, it just gets to the point where I have to have an outlet for it, and so my outlet is this video today. So I'm going to read to you this email first of all, and this one was actually I believe it was on my video called Adam and Eve and the Others, and so very insightful. And both the comments that I'm going to be reading today, I don't remember if there are 2 or 3, they are actually all from the same person. I get lots of really great comments, so I just want to thank all of you. I get lots of great emails. And
so someone has sent Shelley an email or left her a comment. Now, I wouldn't want to dox the person online, but I might choose to sort of dig into it, find out who they are, where their comment has come from. Maybe you don't need to verify them and their validity in this, but if you're going to use it as, basis for your video, then you might want to look into the things they're saying, who they are, why they're saying them. Or I don't know if, I'm not saying she's a private detective. I'm not saying that you should go and dox them, not that. So I don't know from what point of someone sent me a comment and I'm reading it out online I don't know what went on in between that, whether Shelley's done a lot of research, whether she's friendly with this person, whether it's verifiable, whether they are a good source or not, but we'll see.
Is that there was a pre-Adamic race of humans. It says Jewish understanding is that there was a pre-Adamic race of humans.
So Jewish understanding is that before Adam in the Bible, there were more people. Because in the Bible that we know, obviously Adam's the first one. But Jewish people think, and this isn't my opinion, this is Shimshon Ben Dan's opinion. The Others is a great film, a total switcheroo on Ghosts and Haunted, but I'll watch it sometime, I'll have a look.
Genesis 1:27.
It's probably got just as much basis in fact as this.
God created man in his own image.
Yeah, so in Genesis, God created man. I got that, yeah, I understand that.
Created in Hebrew is bara.
Created in Hebrew is bara. Of course, this person's referring to the original language that these things would have been written in, Hebrew or Aramaic maybe. Shelley's getting her information from a Bible that was rewritten and retranslated. We've discussed it before. It's common knowledge that politically there was reasons for rewriting and changing certain things. So they just did, didn't they, over the years? It's been quite a few of them, and there's been quite a few translations, and they get, like Chinese whispers, they get changed in whispers. And there are some words that we don't even have. We don't even have like proper equivalents from Hebrew or Aramaic. So it's on that tip at the moment.
This was on the 6th day. Now in Genesis 2:7, God formed man on the 7th day. The verb in Hebrew is yetzer. This word means to mold, to shape, to form, as how a potter would create pottery.
It's very much the same in all of the Abrahamic religions, whether the words are slightly different or not. If you look into Islam, God created man out of a clot of mud, I believe, or clay, translations of words. So I think it's very much the same with all of these. These religions have the same stem, don't they? So they have the same sort of origin mythology.
There is also additional information where it says that God breathed the breath of life.
In chat, historians asking, did Adam have a navel or belly button? If we could find a fossil with no belly button, then we have found Adam. And of course, no, he didn't. He was just put on earth made out of mud. But the issue that we have today in this understanding of the creation myth is that we have evidence for other things like history, time, evolution. We've got the bones, we've got the carbon dating, there's all sorts. Again, I don't think I should really divert to... I want to make sure we try and get through her video in today's episode, because I have a tendency to go down rabbit holes, and then before we've even debunked her video, I'm off down some deeper rabbit hole. But, there's lots of reasons why you might say we believe in the scientific versions of history, rather than taking it from the Bible that it happened, God just happened it.
Into the nostrils of Ha-Adam.
No, don't worry about apologies. I like your chats. Go for it, chat. It's just I'm aware. I'm doing it to myself. I'm saying it to myself because I was going to follow and just go and I agree with your points. They're interesting points. I think it's good that I take them and we talk about them and then I move forward instead of sometimes I could take a point and I could I don't mind. The other way is fine as well. The other way is fine as well. I can do whatever I want. It's my stream. So if I want to turn this episode into let's really dig deep about the Bible, then we can. But I've done one before. Did the Bible prove flat Earth? That exists on the channel. So there is a Bible-based one already. But let's just crack on because I just want to, like I said, I just want to make sure we get at least halfway. It's my own fault. And I'm doing it now. So.
A living being, Nefesh. Day 6 talks about man being created. Day 7 talks about God carefully forming Adam and breathing his breath into him to make him a living being. This would explain how the Watchers or fallen angels were able to commingle with human women. And
hang on, wait. The first bit I was all right with. At least let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. God just made man, Adam, breath, life. You are in existence. Have a go at that. This would explain how angels were able to commingle with human... What? This would explain how what?
Forming Adam and breathing his breath into him to make him a living being. This would explain how the Watchers or fallen angels were able to commingle with human women and produce the Nephilim.
Right. Okay, so I'll quickly give you the debunk on Nephilim, because again, today I want to push through, but this is where I could go. I didn't know what she's about to say. I'm coming to it cold. So I could have had all the windows open, but Nephilim is an idea from Enoch. Enoch was a prophet, in inverted commas. I say a prophet because there were lots of other people that wrote biblical style stories back in the day, just want a nice pretty image? That's a tiny image, you chuffer. That's a tiny image. What about this one? It's a tiny. They're tiny. It can't be that tiny, can it? Okay, Enoch. So, we're talking Bible days. We're talking all those, the Bible's made up of lots of different books. All of those books originally were written on scrolls and they had to be correlated and kept together. Someone had to say, oh, I've found a new old scroll, and it was the prophet of Elijah, and Elijah's a prophet. And I'll read, that's good, that can go in our Bible. Put that with the other scrolls, that's the Bible. The Bible means like library. So put them all together. And then eventually we don't have loads of scrolls, do we? We just got it all written in a book. So Enoch was in the book, but then they looked at it and they said, you know what? As modernity goes on, as time goes on, we realise some of the ideas just don't really hold so much water. And Enoch is one of them, where he looked like a fucking madman. Some of the stuff Enoch's, I said swear word, I said chuffer. I'm trying to keep it clean for YouTube. I love Del Boy's Book of Prophets. That's a good one. The concept is that Enoch went out into the desert and had some funny ideas and wrote it down and talked to God and all that business, but he seemed a little bit less credible than some of the others. And so what you have to do is you have to look at the Book of Enoch and say some of these ideas are quite interesting, but there are others that don't hold water. So for example, if I put Book of Enoch, and then I want sun portals. So what Enoch thought, like the way Enoch describes it, they might try and even make it fit view. Can't I view this image? No, stop messing about, Windows. Open image in a new tab. What Enoch said was that the sun rises in this one portal, because he's in the desert and he can see that the sun is moving on the horizon, on different days. And he's like, well, how is this happening? So he's made up a system where it goes in portals, and when it's nighttime, it travels through the portal to the next rising space, and all this business about portals. And Enoch thinks that the sun disappears into a black hole at the end of the day and reappears out of a different black hole, and that black hole shifts around the horizon. He doesn't understand that the sun is a celestial body and that we move around it, and that's why we perceive night and day. So Enoch was confused because he was in the desert and he was living hundreds of years before civilization. So he's out there in the desert, he's written his book, he's gone back to his people, and some people thought he was a prophet. Other people thought he was a madman. Today we think he's a madman. Even the people that write the Bible think he's a madman, to the point where they won't have his stuff in the Bible because you prove it can't make sense. So he also wrote about Nephilim, about angels coming down and having sex with women, and the progeny of those angels being a giant civilization of giants, and those giants had a war and they were eating all the people. They were eating all the people, Enoch said, and eventually we had to fuck them off. That didn't happen. There is no evidence for it other than Enoch's conjecture. Enoch is a madman, okay? So that's where we've got that from. But if today you want to preach that, you go ahead.
DNA was now tainted. We know that later in the flood story, we see that Noah is called perfect in his generations. Not perfect in his behavior, but in his generations.
This is, again, we're what's happening here is that Shelley's giving us third-hand information. It's not her information. It's from Shimshon Ben Dan, which has been emailed to her or commented on one of her videos, and she's now relaying it to us. So just bear that in mind. Shelley, homeschooler of 6 children or some shit. I've said shit. No. Nephilim sound like incubus. There are all sorts. There's all sorts. And also, interestingly about the zodiac, 12 signs. There are actually
which
13.
is Toldot.
There are actually 13 signs in the zodiac, but like it doesn't fit quite, so we just chop it down. Trust me, like, we'll look at it another time.
In Hebrew. There is also the issue of Cain when he became a fugitive and wanderer. Cain was driven from where he was living, and he went to the land of Nod, east of Eden. There he found a wife, and she conceived. The question is, who did Cain marry if it was just Adam, Eve, Abel, now dead, and Cain?
What, duh? That question has plagued mankind since the dawn of time. No. We just assume it's not right, do we? Like, who did they have sex with? Who did they meet and marry? Cain and Abel, the sons of Adam and Eve. Who did they? How could they? What about when Noah and his flood, and after that everyone just had children and all the children had sex with each other, and I'm supposing, and I'm the progeny of the bastard race of inbreeding. It just, come on. It's either that or it could be evolution. Now, the problem with your story there is that if it's your way, like, we don't end up with what we've got now, do we? But fortunately, we can trace the DNA. I'm going to go with evolution. I'm just going to bin off all this rubbish. Even if I love God and God loves me, this stuff that was written down by these people on these scrolls, and at the time you didn't have police, and at the time you didn't have like social order, and religion played a huge role in society, and now that we've gone on this secularization of society, this journey of a breakdown of the church being in control of our lives, and instead us having more independence and forming our own choices, like governments and, you know, rules and ethics, and what's right and wrong should not be decided by the magic priest who can talk to God, but instead we should know it in our own hearts and discuss it with each other and form social ideas in that aspect. And I think I prefer it this way, and I think it holds more legitimacy. So I'm going to just say that, move on.
If there was indeed a pre-Adamic race, then that would answer the question who he made.
Oh, you know about the extra sign, or I don't know enough, you know more. I don't know how to pronounce it. You are that sign, the 13th, on the cusp of Scorpio and Sagittarius. There you go. So we agree. I just, I heard it said, looked into it a bit, thought it was interesting. It was one of those things like, I get a lot of, I'm going to say this for truth and people are going to think it's ridiculous, but I get a lot of information from things like QI. You probably know what I'm talking about here. Like on QI, like they talk about things and it's interesting. And then you can have a little go on the internet, can't you, and like find out. I watch a bit of QI, and it's a quiz show, but it's about facts and information. And I think I remember it from that, maybe.
Married. I have been a teacher of Hebrew and things pertaining to Judaism and the Hebrew Bible for over 30 years.
Right.
The one thing I have learned and have shared is
Listen, they said in a comment that they're a teacher of Hebrew. I can't verify that. And nor have you. It might be nice for you to have done that verification before you brought it onto your stream, but we'll just go with it, shall we? We'll go with it.
that most of us need to unlearn much of what we have heard so that we may rightly divide the Word of God. Tradition has given us many false assumptions in the Bible, which can be fixed by looking at the Hebrew and Greek deep meanings.
So, the teacher of Hebrew and Judaism is telling this woman who preaches the Bible on the internet that if you look more deeply, you might find the Jewish Bible's better than your Bible, is what he's saying.
And so I just want to thank you for that fantastic comment, especially coming from someone who is so well versed in the Hebrew Bible.
How do you know that they're well versed in the Hebrew Bible? They just told you that was there. Oh my God. Is this how you go about in life? Hello, I'm an expert in, I don't know, washing machines. You need a new washing machine. Why do I need it? Well, let me tell you, because I'm an expert in washing machines. Oh yes, of course, your washing machine is on the old cycle. It's spinning the wrong way. Nowadays, we spin them the other way. So bin that off and buy one from me. Oh, trust me, it's the best washing machine. Why not have two? Two? Yeah, you'll get twice as much washing done. Shut up. I cannot... To me, this is not how my life works. I'm not like, oh, right, someone well-versed in the Hebrew Bible has left me a comment. I'll take that on board. What I do next is I go, are they? Right. And I said, question their legitimacy, question the narrative, remember? This is what's baffling me, is she questions the narrative, but is not questioning this narrative being told to her in a comment. Like, I would question who's doing the comment and why. maybe question the legitimacy. I'm not saying dox them. I'm just saying ask them, look them up. Can you give me you teach, where do you teach? Can I verify that, for my own benefit? And then after that, I might even verify the things they're saying, mightn't I? I might say, is it what the rest of the teachers of Hebrew and Judaism believe, or is this just one Enoch in the desert with some funny ideas? Is this a generic, general view? I'd look around at the other views, maybe read a couple of books, articles online, start to get myself well versed in the stuff that someone else is well versed in, so I can verify and I can't just take it for granted because they're the expert and they told me online.
And that really does but has been given the theory of what I proposed a little bit of credibility, or I should say a
little bit of credibility. It gives her theory that she proposed, that she made up on her own, I'm assuming, or got from some weird ideas on the internet, maybe, gives it more credibility. So there's this thing that we have, and this is just me popping off again, going on diversions, but I think being educated, it helps you to have these additional thoughts. I think a lot of people might know what I'm talking about here, is that we have a bias towards things that we agree with. I think I don't have to go on the internet and show you I shouldn't. I don't have to in my mind, because I know it to be fact, but confirmation bias it's called. Confirmation bias. And the reason we know it happens is because they've done the studies. So it's the tendency to process information by looking for, interpreting information that's consistent with one's existing beliefs. This biased approach to decision making is largely unintentional. It often results in ignoring inconsistent information. So confirmation bias actually exists. There's been studies. It's a psychological thing. There's quite a lot of information here. This is what I'm saying about, if you want to question me, I'm allowed to just say it on the internet, yeah? I'm allowed to just say it, but I'm on Wikipedia here. There's so much about it. The hypothesis testing, the explanation, Kleiman and Ha. So they're the scientists, the psychologists that did the studies. People suggest things first, they study it, they show experiments, and we find out, cognitive versus motivational. We should do a bit of a chat with Steve on this. This is a Steve of the Dead conversation, isn't it? About psychology. Love this sort of stuff. So I know it exists, and because we know it exists, it informs so much more than just, oh well, it exists. Because when you're doing, for example, law, the law, what if there's a confirmation bias? Well, that's going to be important, isn't it? We need to know. So we use the idea that we understand confirmation bias to reinterpret how we understand the world. I say to myself, am I just looking for things that support my opinion? If so, I'm exhibiting confirmation bias. In this argument, in this conversation, in this discussion, for my own benefit, for my own learning, I should put my confirmation bias aside and try more to see the truth. What Shelley's just explained to me is that this thing sounds a bit like what she said, so she thinks it's probably right. So she's exhibiting confirmation bias because she doesn't understand the world in the same way as we do. She can't navigate it properly. Question the narrative.
Not give me, but has been given the theory of what I proposed a little bit of credibility, or I should say a lot of credibility, when it is coming from someone who has actually put their life into studying this.
And she's going to be biased into believing this person is telling her the truth because it tells her what she wants to hear. Hello, Bob. What's up? What's up is I'm back online, not quite in flow with the schedule. Daytime YouTube tomorrow, hopefully. I need to be up and at it now. Time for COVID to have left my system. I think I still feel a bit fuzzy, but a bit bunged up. But I think it's time to crack on. Next week we won't have a guest in the house because don't want them to catch a COVID, and I haven't got anyone booked. But hopefully by the end of the month we get a guest in. Hooray! And we stick to this schedule, and things start to take off. Things are going to start happening for me now, and we're just having fun listening to Shelley's homeschooling, questioning the narrative, and I'm trying to let it flow. We're going to do an hour and a half even yet, so we've got some time, but you know what I'm like. I keep pausing it. I don't let it roll. I'm going to try and do one today where I actually get through her whole video and listen to what she's got to say. The problem is that everything she says, minute by minute, is just such foolery that I have to interject all the time to point it out.
Sorry, my coffee pot is really loud right now, but I didn't want to wait to start the video because once I'm motivated to do it, I just want to do it. If I put it...
Here's a top tip. if you've got something noisy in a video, this is just, again, I can't help it. This is a diversion. If you've got a top tip though, for anyone who's making any videos, if you've got a noise, you don't want a noise in the background, a funny fan or a building site, whatever. You don't want that. Yeah, the plane goes overhead. Damn it, oh, I want to cut now. But what you can do is you can just show it. So what she should have done is recorded herself, coffee pot maybe even in the background, so you can see it, hear it. It makes sense to your brain then. You're psychologically able to say, I understand that noise, and it goes away into the background because you're used to, as a human, listening to people talk over different noises. So you ignore the noise and just focus. What she's done here is she's drawn your attention to the noise. You can't see it, so you can't contextualize it, and now it's just an annoying noise that she's drawn attention to. She's not editing her own, she's not even editing her own video or anything like that. And again, like little tricks like that, little smart tricks like that improve what you're doing in terms of media. Shelley's got no idea still. So, like, again, my question, when I question the narrative, is I would question this woman and her narratives, where she's getting her information, her ability to teach it to her children. And she, like, there's so much, like, for me, we mentioned it on the No Pressure Wash this week, our little test stream to test the new facilities I've got for streaming. And I mentioned this woman on that because she's, to me, like almost as bad as a dark side feel. She's a different kind of lolcow. I don't get many lols, and I don't want to use the word cow necessarily, but you know, in that ballpark, you have to use that brush, don't you? Lolcow. So this is my personal favourite. I've got others. We're going to keep doing them.
You never know what's going to happen, and that's why so many times I never get my videos made. Anyway, though, so if you can just hear me above the gurgling of my coffee pot, this part actually came in the same comment. I just forgot to read it. It was before this paragraph here, but it says, if we go to Genesis 3:15, we see that after the serpent Nakash beguiled Eve and Adam, God said that he would put enmity between the serpent's seed and the woman's seed. The seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent, while the serpent would heal of the seed. While the serpent would, I think it was bite, or would bite the heel of the seed of the woman.
No. We're quoting Genesis 3:15, yeah? You can't just start making up, like, oh, I think it's this. I think it's that. You can't just start, and thanks for saying you loved the stream this week. It was literally just a test because we want to be able to play games, use the internet, screen share, all this stuff. I've got new software. I needed to see it working, and we didn't have much plan. It's a relaxed week. Like we say, we're going to do on, off. We're going to do one solid next week. You know, on Monday coming up, we're doing Prince Andrew, serious stuff. You know, we're going to do the body language reaction to his interview. I've been wanting to do it for ages. Forensic psychologist versus Prince Andrew's interview. Bang on. And then the week after, we'll probably do more messing around and chilling because it can't be serious every week. What did they say? Genesis 3:15. Right. Genesis 3:15. The internet will have this. The New International Version. That's not the version I'm used to. I'm used to the King James Version. Different kind of politics. But I will put, and I've got to get it right, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. And instead of that, what we've got here is, God said he would put enmity between the serpent's seed and the woman's seed. That's not quite right. The seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. It's all getting a bit confusing. While the serpent would heal of the seed of the woman, is what's written there. I don't know. What are we going to do? What are we going to say? What are we going to say about that? I don't know how to deal with that, really. What I would do, for me, in my life, is I'd say, okay, that's interesting. I don't think it really informs how I should behave or think. So I'm just going to leave that where it is, and we're going to go and move on and, you know, think about some things that are more important than that.
Satan at that time had a plan to create a parallel race of beings with that of Adam and his future generations. That parallel race will be created to worship Satan, something he has desired since he...
What? again, they've done this thing in their comment where they've said, right, it says this in the Bible, and you go, okay, yeah, it kind of says that in the Bible, and they said, so Satan's going to make a human super race of, like, what? When did it say that in the Bible? It didn't. I don't know how you inferred that Satan's going to make a super race of robots out of. They didn't say robots either. I did. That's what they're doing.
To create a parallel race of beings with that of Adam and his future generations. That parallel race will be created to worship Satan, something he has desired since he was expelled from heaven.
Right. That's a bit dangerous, actually. That's very dangerous, because what you're now saying is that there's somewhere a parallel race and that they're devil people, essentially. So that's quite dangerous, because if you think about it like this, like, you might be Jewish, Shimshon Ben Dan. You might be Jewish. She might be European, like Polish, heritage American. Might be, you know, I'm just guessing, like, you know, being racial. Ooh, racial. But that's as far as racial as I'm getting, is to just refer to people by their sort of ethnic backstory, rather than like do any sort of negative definition of, like, I think it's just interesting. We're from different parts of the world. It's the history of our DNA and our history, isn't it? So it's an interesting thing, and all that difference and diversity now, even culturally, has led to this vast melting pot where I can enjoy a curry or a sweet and sour, and I can learn about the Aboriginal mythology and listen to the didgeridoo, and at the same time I can then go into the next like room, and I could, or the same room even, and I can enjoy some traditional street food from Vietnam or something like that. We've got like this whole, I'm struggling to find, you know, to say specifics, but we all know everything we love and do is a mix of all this different stuff from around the world. And now that we've been out and been diverse and been on our own and little islands and pockets of humanity, we've grown and we've come back together like as humanity, and now we're connected by the internet, and all those divisions and divides can just sort of go away, and we can live for the future and enjoy, take all the best of everything, and we are all humans together. We've just got our different ways and different traditions and even DNA, but together we're all in the same boat, going in the same direction. I think that's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I think that's a wonderful thing. But what they've said here is that that's not a wonderful thing, because there is a race out there. I'm not going to say which one. I'm going to leave it to, I'm not saying it, they're saying it, but they haven't yet said which one they specifically mean. But maybe we should be watching out for this race of devil people. Maybe I'm okay, maybe you're okay, and maybe there's devil people out there that we should be watching out for. I wonder which race they're going to point out and single out as the race of devil people that they want to maybe eradicate. Maybe it's a bit strange coming from someone who puts themselves up as being an expert in Hebrew and Judaism, who I would assume to be Jewish, because that's what happened to the Jewish people, and they didn't like it.
Okay, so this one here, again, is the same author, and it's a comment on another video, and it's actually the second part of this comment that really compelled me to want to do this video today.
Okay, because this is still scene setting for us. Shelley has not said her opinion on these comments yet. She's just brought them to us through her channel, which legitimizes them in our eyes as her. Like, when I'm bringing her opinions, I'm countering them. She's not countering that. She's just brought it to it, giving it her stamp of approval. And of course, the way the internet works is if I get a guest on and they say some stuff and I don't counter it and give a counter argument, I am literally publishing that as if it's from me. It's on my channel. So on her channel, she's publishing these comments. They are now from her. They're like, you know, if someone were to say, oh, I don't like what she said on that, and, you know, give her a copyright, not a copyright, you know, a misinformation strike or something like that, she can't say, oh, somebody else said it, I didn't say it. It's on your channel, love. That's your opinion now. Well, you know, legally going out there, you're putting your rubber stamp on it. So there's that.
So let's just read the first.
You're the daughter of a Scottish Presbyterian and Methodist mum. We never did the religion stuff. You didn't have your children christened. Yeah, I think these days, even if we believe in God, like as a principle of love and being good to each other and kind to our neighbours and stuff, like even if we believe in heaven and hell sometimes, it doesn't mean that we go reading every line of the Bible and saying, right, well, in Genesis chapter 136, it says this, therefore you can't drink coffee, or you can't. It's not how that works anymore, is it? I think these days, most people, even if you're from a bit of a religious background or not, Like, your choices and decisions, even if you are religious, I'm saying, don't have to be as strict and as by the letter in the book these days, even if you do love God and have a faith. Like, people can be a bit more general these days, I think. I think we live in a secular society where people more often than not would say, no, I'm not religious. But deep down, they might still have some sort of spirituality to them. I think that's fine. That's enough. I don't think we have to have all the boxes and lines drawn around it. You believe in a God or a power greater than us humans, a God, yeah. So, like, you know, I think that's enough, and I don't think we're ever going to get the answers in our lifetime. So people with scientific methods, same as I do to some of their ideas, might say, oh no, this and that and the other. Fine, yeah, okay, science can, up to a limit, give me some answers, but there are some answers I'm not going to get, really. So that's just it. You can't tell me them. You can't tell me that man in the desert knew them and that I should believe that. I have to know it for myself. If God wants me to know it, I will. You know, I think it's a bit like that, and it should be really easy to navigate then, because there should be no pressure on anyone, should there? I'm not going to pressure anyone else to believe the strict word of God, because we're going to just sort of say, okay, in general, vague terms, have your beliefs and faiths. In specifics and detailed ifs, buts, off with their heads. No thanks.
This part, though, because it is equally interesting. Shelley, when you have a moment, check out Isaiah 34:14 on the Bible Hub. So let's take a look at what Isaiah 34:14 says.
I think we looked at Isaiah before. Isaiah's one of these difficult ones because was Isaiah one person? Isaiah was written by 3 different people. So separated by 15 years. How the 3 Isaiahs came together is not known, it says here. Like, what I remember was, because we've looked at it before, is that Isaiah was a prophet again, you know, maybe a king, but it seems that there was the first Isaiah who wrote a book that was maybe more about, I can't remember which order they came in. Like, one was more strict and one was more about other ideas. But the first one was more about ideas, and then society fell apart, and then the king obviously was replaced, and this second Isaiah wrote a book all about what God had told him, all about these strict rules so that society would just sort themselves out and do what they're told. And that worked for a bit. And then you got a third Isaiah, which was a bit more sort of like airy-fairy and something different. Like, they were separated by time, and in that time there was political conflict, and so it seemed like the opinions and views of Isaiah might have changed slightly in the 15 years, and that seems like it was somebody else writing it for a different reason, and evidenced by this sort of conflict and social change that was happening at that very time. So we think that it's possible that Isaiah was sort of, you know, written by different people to keep the world in check. And it's hard, therefore, to take any part of Isaiah. It doesn't matter which part of Isaiah you want to lean on. Then you have to say, yeah, but the other part of Isaiah is a bit different to that. So like, it's hard to take anything from Isaiah and say, oh, right, okay, we'll go with that, because it contradicts itself in some ways. I'm not going to get any deeper than just saying that.
Isaiah 34:14 says, in the New International Version, desert creatures will meet with hyenas, and wild goats will bleat to each other.
It's like the Lion King.
There the night creatures will also lie down and find for themselves.
She's put adverts on this. I didn't do it. She has. I can't afford Google. I'll tell you what, the first thing I want to do is get an editor, get another member of the team to help me create content. I think that helps to push things forward. I can edit, but then it's time off making content, and it's, you know, it's another job on top of what I'm doing. So that's the first thing. The next thing is I'm going to pay for the YouTube Premium and get rid of the adverts. But it's £150 a year, and I can't afford that now.
Filling the night. Wild goats will bleat at one another among the ruins, and night creatures will come there to rest. Let's go to the King James. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts. So
she's proving here, look, she's reading the different versions and proving that the King James is very different. Because we don't have desert creatures in little old England. So we changed it to wild beasts of the desert instead of desert creatures. Like, we called it wild beasts of the desert. It's a bit more fantastical, even. We don't have the same stories as she had.
Go to the King James. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr, isn't that interesting, shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest.
Isn't it interesting that just after I described a reason for changing the language, because we don't have those animals, so we made up more fantastical animals, you know, for the imagination purposes. When you're thinking about the deserts in little old England, you have different ideas to when you're thinking about the deserts and you live in like Samaria. So we put screech owls and satyrs and wild beasts of the desert because we're just making it up and imagining it. And it made it like, for the populace at large that were listening to it, you know, King James was adapting certain things for his own benefit, and that kind of language probably helped to sell the whole bigger concept. You know, it made it more fantastic. So people are like, oh, I love the old Bible, I'm well into it. I haven't got much entertainment on in my day-to-day life, but when I go to church and I hear these stories of these fantastical realms, it's actually kind of entertaining. It's a different way of sharing and encouraging people to come into your organisation, isn't it? If you're in little old England or out in the deserts of Samaria, different kinds of congregation, different kinds of language. They do it today. You know, if you look at different churches around the world today, they are very different, and they speak the gospel in different ways because it appeals to their different demographics in different ways. The way they change it makes it appeal to them more. So you'll see, you know, like different churches with very different styles. And it's not that the Bible itself is styled very differently, it's that they're changing things to seem very different, like we did in the past.
Virtually every translation uses night creature, screech owl, or even night monster. The word in Hebrew is Lilith, or Lilith as translated from Hebrew. Lilith
Fraser, Lilith
is a female demon and supposedly the first wife of Adam, according to Jewish lore. You can find much about her on occult and witchcraft sites. She is responsible for murdering infants, causing miscarriages, and attacks pregnant women. She is connected with a fallen angel named Samael.
She sounds like a right chuffer to me. Right bad chuffer.
It is interesting that this name is only mentioned once in the Bible. Between the myths, legends, and lore, this demon may be connected somehow to the early rise of the Nephilim and possibly even Titans.
There we go again. So we've said, look, in Jewish tradition, we've got this concept of a woman called Lilith who was a bad chuffer, and then you don't really have it in your Bible, but it could be the Titans and the Nephilim. Like, what? How are you making that leap? Why are you making that leap? It seems really weird.
I've learned when a name is mentioned only once and given prominence, we should pay close attention to it. Before I even get on to the next part of the comment, I just want to say that regarding Lilith, and about being able to find much about her on occult and witchcraft, and about her being responsible for murdering infants and causing miscarriages, I have been reading up on the history of feminism, and I believe the book is called Occult Feminism. I'll leave a link in.
She baffles me. She baffles me. Like, I'm guessing it's going to be the first thing that comes up on the internet when I type it into Google, because for her it tends to be. This occult feminism, the secret. Let's see what she said. She's going to leave a link. The secret history of women's liberation. Yes, it's the first thing that comes up on, of course. And what's this? Is this Rachel Wilson? Is a wife and Orthodox Christian mother of 5 children. Wait. So I was going to say, is this a credible book? Is this a credible? So this book is written by Rachel Wilson. I'm not saying she's not credible. I'm just giving you her. You can decide. Rachel Wilson is a wife. That's her first. She's a wife. Is that a wife? Is that a thing that you are? Is that like a job title that you are now these days? You know, that's put it out on my CV. Wife. Rachel Wilson is a wife, an Orthodox Christian, mother of 5 children. Even that sentence is not punctuated correctly. Author. She's a homeschooling advocate who lives in the rural Midwest. When she's not attending to her duties to her family and church, when she is not attending to her duties to her family and church, she enjoys fitness, cooking, researching history, and studying philosophy and religion. Rachel is a licensed firearms instructor. Let her at the guns. Give her a gun. Who specialises in home defence and concealed carry. Specialises in hiding the gun about her person. Rachel Wilson. I think I'm in love. What could be better in this world than somebody who self-identifies as a wife and is licensed to hide a gun about their person whilst they attend to their duties of family and church. But right, I'm laughing because in my perspective in the world, am I starting in the way of her face? Actually, maybe you want to see her face and I'll lean back. In my world, in the UK, we don't have much worry for family and church duties so much. Like in America, it's quite like that though, isn't it? It's like, you know, God praise America, God bless America, and to the church, and you know, there's a bit more of that, isn't it? It's a bit more evangelical about certain things. Feels a bit like that. This Orthodox Christian mother of five, homeschooling advocate, gun toter. I wonder which way she votes. Build the wall, build the wall. Fucking crooked Hillary. Right. I mean, that was just an amazing... I didn't even look at the book, did I? Because I don't give a shit what she says or thinks in her book. Although maybe we should buy it. That could be a... See, what I should do, actually, I should do this. I don't really want to, you know, show you my Amazon or whatever have you. But I was just there, wasn't I? History. Rachel Wilson's book. Tough off, stupid. I'm being stupid now. Let's use this link that she sent us then. Let's go to Rachel Wilson's book. Occult female. She didn't even send us the actual link. She just sent us her link, right? Get this. Her link, Shelley's link, isn't a link to the actual book. It's a link to the search for the book on Amazon. So it could be any of these books she's referring to. It's not. It's the first one on the list by her mate, Rachel Wilson. I mean, I want it now. I'm giving her money if I buy it. Oh, that's the problem. But I want it. Sales tax may apply. Shipping to the United Kingdom. In stock, though. And then I could sit here and read it to you. And that can be part of our journey. Like, creating journeys like this... Uncontrolled Historian's got to go. I'm sorry I'm not on so early today. Need to be on earlier. But creating journeys like this in the content is one of the things I want to do. And I think this is an opportunity for that. So I might... Since the 1970s, everything we learn about the history of the women's movement has been subject to gatekeeping by radicals who run women's studies departments and universities, but there's an entire history which has been obscured from public view. Rachel Wilson brings this history to life, filled with the incredible true stories of demon worship, spirit mediums, magic mushrooms, witchcraft, CIA spies, and sex cults. There's nothing boring about the real history of feminism, and it's all here. I mean, I want it. She's sold it to me now. Get it by Monday. All right, hang on. I'm going to put it in my cart. Yeah, add to cart. Do I want the hard cover? Usually with a book, I prefer a hard cover. It's like double the price, but, you know, it is a hard cover, isn't it? Do you think she gets twice as much money, or do you think the money goes into creating the hardcover? Like, I don't really care about giving this woman $30. I mean, I do, because I don't think she deserves it for this. I think it's the opposite. She should be forced to pay the money to have this on Amazon. It's like an advert for her rubbish, but on the other hand, and it's a lot of money, $32. Usually ships within 12 days. The paperback is in stock. That's the difference. Like, sometimes a book's so good that I then go and buy the hardcover. So maybe I'll do it that way. I can't see myself ever going and buying the hardcover. I'm only going to buy this once, aren't I? I'm going to leave that window open. I'm going to come back to it later because I'm thinking about what to do, because it's a lot of money really to be wasting on something stupid, but also spending 30 quid for a good YouTube video where we went on a journey today, we found this book, and then I bought it and read it to you, and like we explored it. I think that's worth the money for making content. Buy new hardcover. Might have to wait for it, but it's nicer to have, isn't it, in a hardcover? Then it's heavier to lift and move. And that sounds ridiculous, but I've got a lot of books. So it does add to the load of books. Or maybe we do something with it later on. Maybe I'll give it away in a prize draw and it becomes a better prize because it's a hardcover. Anyway, look, we're adding it to the cart. Added to the cart. Let's move on with the episode. I can't believe that she's using that anyway. But
in the description box, for if any of you would want to check it out. And one of the things that it actually talks about in the history of feminism is that there is much occult background to.
I need to know if Rachel Wilson. Right, come on, give me Rachel Wilson. I need to know. I mean, Rachel Wilson's a very generic name, isn't it? It's not just going to come up. But I need to know if she's got like her own YouTube or whatever. I'll just put occult. Maybe that'll help. Rachel Wilson on the occult origins of feminism, piercing the wall. A year ago, 9 months ago. Occult feminism. Dissident mama. Rachel Wilson. Oh, here she is. Here she is. Then she's doing an interview. Oh, maybe we can get her on and do an interview with her. I mean, I've already said it's a load of bollocks, but this is definitely a tangent. I'm going on a tangent now. Said I wouldn't, but we'll just have a quick look at Rachel Wilson herself.
Hello, and welcome to the Dissident Mama podcast.
That's the Dissident Mama. This is Rachel Wilson.
Books, so I've encountered some of that too, and I think that I just thought, well, I do think I have opinions that I can contribute that are important. And
she thinks she's got opinions that she can contribute that are important. That's I'm starting to feel the I don't want to do a dark side film and like start snorting back mucus on camera, but I'm starting to feel my nose like fill up, my sinuses fill up as I'm talking, and my breathing's starting to become more laboured, like not in my lungs but through my sinuses with the old Stephanie Campbell, Michelle Gibson. We've looked at Michelle Gibson once before. We certainly can look at her again. Absolutely. We're doing Shelley today, and I've just gone on a tangent, so I will continue that tangent quickly. And we're going to come back to these two women. I'll buy the book, and we will come back to these two. Michelle, I don't know why I just thought Michelle would work. Gibson. I'll take your comment immediately. Michelle Gibson is someone that I have on my radar who talks an awful lot of chuff on the internet, doesn't she? I think, have I got that right? I mean, it's hard to know what she's talking about because it's all very confusing. Even just looking on her channel is very confusing. But I think she's one of these as well. So we'll bring her into her own. Like, the problem with someone like Michelle Gibson is she doesn't actually make very clear media. So it's hard to sort of bring up one of her videos and say, this is Michelle, this is what she thinks. Isn't this a bit strange? Because it's quite confusing just looking at it anyway. So there is that. But we will, we're definitely going to shine a light on her at some point. We're currently doing Shelley.
I just really wanted to talk about the three that I have been seeing, especially on Twitter.
So Shelley is telling us about comments she got. She's as a lead into her own video. There's still 20 minutes left of her video. I need to hurry this along.
To the current, not even just the current, to feminism from when it really first started. And a lot of it has to do with the worship of Lilith. So that is super interesting and super troubling, if you ask me. Let's just read the rest of this comment here now. And this is the one that really got me to want to do this particular video today. I listened to your teaching on Genesis 1 and 2, where you mentioned that after the heaven and earth were created, and then in verse 2, where it is translated as without form and void, you had a very insightful look into the Hebrew word hayata, translated as was. Hebrew has no to be verb, and you rightly concluded that it really means become or come to pass. This would indicate that something happened between verses 1 and 2.
Here, it's very easy to debunk all that rubbish, which is to say that if you are going to focus on one word and say it's very important that we understand the Hebrew meaning of this one word, and I've got someone else I follow that I think is actually very good. They teach Muslim philosophy and the Quran, so I follow them so that I can understand perspectives on that, and they sometimes focus on one word or a sentence just for the whole lecture, just like the meaning of this stuff, you know, the word, the sentence for the whole lecture. But what's important is you need to see it as part of the wider context. So you can't say, I'm going to focus on one little word, really detailed, go into it might mean this, it might mean that, and forget all the other words around it and what the whole story means. Like, it's context as well, and words only mean stuff. They don't mean stuff on their own. Like a verb doesn't mean something on its own. It's used in context to mean, like, it's a doing word, isn't it? A verb. Someone does something, I do something, you do something. Who's doing it? Why are they doing it? Where are they doing it? What are they doing? There's so many other things about the context that could create the meaning of what you're reading. It's not just one word. It's not just, oh, if we change this little letter here and that there, then it could have meant this and therefore this and that sounds a bit like this. That no, you read the whole thing through. You understand the whole language, you understand the whole script, and then you start to make these ideas. You can't dive in like this and just say that this one word translates slightly differently as this, therefore magic, aliens and angels and pixies and giants. No.
Which causes the earth to be tainted or spoiled. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. But anyway, we must rethink much of what we have been taught as either translated correctly or taught as tradition. And this is something that I say all the time. We get so steeped up as Christians in Christian tradition.
That is what Christianity is. I find it very... I mean, I'm not on the side of let's follow the book to the letter, right? But she is. You can't come to me and say I'm an evangelical Christian. Evangelical's the wrong word, isn't it? I don't know what was that woman we just met? What was she? She was one of them. I've forgotten the word that they used. Orthodox Christian mother. Okay, Orthodox. That's their word, her word. You can't come to me. I don't know whether Shelley would say that Shelley's Orthodox or whether she's like whatever. But you can't say that. I'm going on the Bible, I'm going on Genesis, I'm going on the very word of the Bible, Adam and Eve and this and that. You can't say that and then say to me, oh yeah, but we get too up in the tradition. I want to change it now and do it the way I want to do it. I don't really like having to go to church every Sunday. I'd rather just stay home and sit on my arse and eat chocolate. So God doesn't want me to go to church on Sunday because I'm changing just that bit. We don't need to get steeped up in the traditions. We only need to listen to the fucking letter of the law exactly as it's written in the Bible, translated by the Hebrew, but not too good. You can't have both. You can't have both.
That we're following Christian tradition sometimes and not what the Bible actually says.
The tradition comes from what the Bible says. Now they're questioning the whole church. Question the narrative. Good on them, actually. Good on them. You could follow that through if you want. Actually, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say, tick in a box. Yes, we shouldn't, just because it's Christian tradition, maybe we shouldn't follow it. The thing they stick on, you got a problem there. Not what the Bible actually says. So you're saying, ignore what the church does and says. Ignore the translations of the Bible through the church leaders. Ignore their opinions, and I kind of believe this is what the Quran's a bit like actually for Muslims, is it's not for the imam to tell you how to think and feel, it's for you to read the word of God and you decide about how you think and feel. That is an important part. Hello Puff Puff Pass. What's this crazy ass stuff? This crazy ass stuff is one of my favourite, I guess you might call her a lolcow.
The most, because I think that it's important that we get the truth out about this.
She's questioning the narrative. She's teaching her kids at home. She's Shelley. She's the world's top homeschooler. And she's a bit confused about the Bible. And she's pointing it out to us. I don't know what In fact, I'm getting confused myself, because I do think we should question what the Bible actually says. We should question the Christian tradition and maybe just bollocks it off and just not follow it and just do what we want. But Shelley.
Most Christians and Jews cannot wrap their head around the idea of there being giants on the earth, which ultimately caused God to send the great flood to
Just one step at a time, Shelley. Most Christians and Jews, this is not a Christian and Jew thing. This goes for people who are like this to me, it's not a Christian and Jew thing, is it? I think you don't have to be Christian or Jew to not believe in giants, not believe in fairies, and that God created. She's saying that Christians and Jews, God created the great flood to end this race of Nephilim, which were angels that came down from heaven and had sex with women and created giants, and the giants were eating people, and it was all going wrong, and God thought, this has got out of hand, so he did a great flood. She's managed to sum that up in a couple of sentences. And also, I mean, she's only going on a comment that she got sent. Also, though, to in some way attach it to Christianity and Judaism, to make it into a religious thing. Like, what? How has this happened in your head?
Of there being giants on the earth, which ultimately caused God to send the great flood to destroy them as well as all animal life, save for Noah and his family and the animals in the ark. So I just want to thank you again for this fantastic comment and for inspiring me. Now let's take a look at the verse that you're referring to.
Yeah, she's been inspired. She's making us a video, and it's good that this comment backed her up on the idea that, as I just explained, God destroyed everything, including all the animal and plant life as well. So, oh my God. I mean, now I'm saying, my God, what's going on? Okay.
Genesis
She'll tell us.
chapter 1, verses 1 to 2 says,
Right.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
And
now
you.
the earth was formless and empty.
Like
Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the
Like in your
Spirit of
brain.
God was hovering over the waters.
Like me.
Now, what I talked about more extensively in another video, so I'm not going to really go too deeply into it today, is as the commenter had mentioned, this is the word was.
Right. Oh, God, here we go. So what's interesting to me is that we're looking at the very first bit of the Bible as well. Again, we're not looking at the whole of everything. It's like in the very first sentence in the Bible, it sort of says there was nothing and then there's everything. God just did it. And we're going to pick on the word was. And I'm like, what? How are you going to drag this out now? What's going on? Because Shelley, bear in mind, I've changed I didn't want to do that, Windows, thank you. Shelley, bear in mind, she teaches her children from home.
Unfortunately, a lot of parents who are looking into homeschooling might see comments by people who really don't know anything about homeschooling.
Because she's the boss. So, you want to worry, don't you, about the way she's dealing with this. It might play out into all the other subjects. Lesson 1, page 1, verse 1. Let's question the word was. Go ahead, Shelley. Teach me something.
And in Hebrew, there is no verb for to be. So what the word that is commonly translated as was could also mean became. And this could actually be read, now the earth became formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. And so what a lot of us believe is that we have a God of order. Why would he create things to be in chaos?
At this point, talking of chaos, I'd like to remind you that Shelley has about 6 kids, I'm just roughly guessing, and they seem to be busying themselves at the moment because she's able to make this video for YouTube. She's got her research, she's got her windows open. At the top there, I can see she's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 tabs, plus whatever's fitting on the left-hand side. And one of those tabs is Lord of the Rings. 2 of the tabs are Lord of the Rings. And one of them is Dr. Jekyll. 2 of them are Dr. Jekyll as well. That's what I can see in the tabs. So she's got time on her hands. Who's teaching her kids? What are her kids doing? How has she got the time to create this video? My mom raised 2 of us and worked full time. Would not have had the time to have that many tabs open and to be talking this shit on the internet. I worry about what's going on behind the scenes. Talking of chaos.
Why would he create things to be formless and empty? And not just formless and empty, desolate. The Hebrew
Desolate. It didn't say desolate. It said formless and empty. Now she's adding words to our understanding of the Bible.
Is tohu va bohu, and it literally means like.
Listen, Lord of the Rings does rock. I wonder now she's thinking about giants and other things. She's going to try and bring it round into that. Maybe she's just confused about the power of books, because Lord of the Rings definitely rocks. Definitely, like, we have lots of fun. We play the computer games, like we imagine, like, oh yeah, but I don't think that it's like the history and there were orcs. But she's like, the Bible rocks as well. It's got lots of cool stories, but I don't think it's literally the history and God, and then pow, and then like Adam and Eve and
destroyed, desolate. And it's only used one other place in the Bible, and it is referring to something that has been completely just decimated. And so that is the picture that we get here. Something happened to cause it to be this way. So the question is what? When most people read this, they just read this all as in one line. When in fact, the gap theory is just the theory that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then it says, now the earth became formless and empty.
Right.
But it didn't happen immediately.
Yes, because there's a full stop there, and then there's a new sentence. So in between that full stop and that sentence, Shelley is going to insert her new understanding of history. If the Bible was what you want to follow, why are you like on page 1, episode 1, chapter 1, verse 1, sentence 1, space sentence 2. Now, in between that 1 and 2, we're going to start inserting stuff. That's ridiculous, isn't it? You would think that fucking God would have just written that stuff in. We don't need a 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 2. That's not how the Bible works. God would have just said, write it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Then all this shit happened. Now the earth was formless and empty. They wouldn't just miss it out, would they? It's the word of God himself. How are they missing? Why is God missing it out? I think you're being a bit mean toward God there, Shelley. And let's be fair, you're more into him than I am.
They might not even know any homeschooling families.
But God's more into me than he is you. That's the weird thing, because I speak truth and, do kind things. God actually is more into me and the things I'm doing than you. You're spreading this weird shit on the internet and endangering your children.
Happened in between there. And that is really what is causing the speculation that I'm going to have today. And again, I'm going to openly admit speculation. And I think I say...
What do you mean openly admit? What else would you do? Claim it to be verifiable fact?
That in every video that I don't have all the answers, and a lot of times I'm just talking about things that I find interesting.
She doesn't have the answers, she's just talking about things she finds interesting. Incidentally, you should also follow her advice on homeschooling.
And I'm talking about possibilities, but it never fails that someone will always comment and tell me, why are you telling people that this is the truth, that this...
She's answered her own question, because it gets clicks and views and she get AdSense money from it.
Know this. No, I don't know this, and I openly say that I don't know. But I also don't think that there's anything wrong with questioning the possibilities, especially if we are doing it on an honest search for the truth.
Okay, on an honest search for the truth, I want to question the possibilities that you're just talking shit on the internet for AdSense money, and that you might not even believe this shit. On an honest search for the truth, I just want to question the possibility that you might not know what the fuck you're on about, and that you're churning out rubbish into the world, and that your children would be better off at school. I just want to search for the truth of what is better for child development. Scaring them with stories of giants and demons, or allowing them to learn mathematics to a GCSE level. Going on a nature walk every day down the same damn path, not knowing anything about any... Name all the trees for me, please. No, I can't. I don't know any of them. But I think these rocks are made out of them, and I think that house is a melted... I think that mountain is a melted house. An honest search for the truth. Yes. Yes. Shelley, please. The words truth, honest and search should not spill from thy mouth with such glee.
They just repeat the information that they read on the internet or that other people tell them.
Right? Okay. But you just repeated the information you found out on the internet that other people told you. That's what you're doing. God help us all.
So I am a huge Lord of the Rings fan.
I didn't realise that she was going to open up that tab. Honestly, I haven't watched this before. I didn't realise. I read the tabs to you. I didn't realise they were lined up in order to make a point here. Oh my God. Shelley, what are you doing?
I enjoy the books. I enjoy the movies. Anything Lord of the Rings.
It's sacrilege. It's against the Jesus church. Or maybe Gandalf represents Jesus. Maybe this is a rereading of the Bible. She's not going to, is she? She's not going to tell me this could be a rereading of the real history of... Come on, come on.
Love. And I
Let's
also
have it.
really love the lore of Lord of the Rings.
Let's have it.
And if you aren't familiar with Lord of the Rings, it supposedly takes place in a place called Middle Earth. But as I have been reading it and as I have been watching it, I cannot help but maybe question, could the world have been like this during that gap? Again.
No. No. No.
This is speculation. But what we need to remember is that folklore and fairy tales and those ideas that persist throughout every culture are rooted in some kind of truth.
It's a film. It's a film now. I mean, it's a book originally. Then it goes back to the truth. It doesn't say this in the Bible. Bear in mind, remember, this is between, and God created the world, full stop. In England we say full stop, not period. Full stop. The world was formless. We're changing the word formless. Change that now. We're going to use an old Jewish word, an old Hebrew word. Orthodox Christian that I am, I think we should change this one word in the Bible. I mean, everyone else gets to change it. Why shouldn't I? I'm going to change this one word to mean desolate. We can't have the word, the verb was. That didn't happen in Hebrew. Fuck that off. I keep swearing. I need the non-swearing to keep my... I need to be YouTube friendly if I want to ever get monetized. I need to get 1,000 subscribers first. Right, so you bin that off. And then in between that sentence and that sentence, we're saying the Lord of the Rings happened. All of this is true.
So it's okay to ask these questions.
Oh, right.
So
Wait. For her, it's okay to ask questions because, of course, she's not saying this is true. She's saying, what if it maybe was true? I don't know. Nobody knows. Therefore, it's just a question. I think that's a way to get around the misinformation on YouTube bullshit, isn't it? But really, it's okay to ask questions if you're a child. Yeah? If you're actually a child. Like, if you're this child... The adverts. Fuck off the adverts. If you're her own child, it would be okay to ask that question. It would actually be fine to ask that question.
So less than 5 minutes away from where I just showed you those giant trees. Here is what I believe to be a giant footprint. And I've shown this before and I kind of like said it jokingly, but now that I see all of the evidence between the man-made mountains and the huge trees and what definitely looks to me like a giant footprint.
Right, so if you're a child, you might say, Mommy, is that a giant footprint? And Mommy might go, oh, what an interesting idea. Look, I can see from the shape of it that you might think it was. No, darling, it's not. But for Shelley, this is a different world.
Like what would be the heel? Show them where the heel would be.
Heel, and then this is the instep, the foot, and then
Like the instep.
And so that's her kids. They're in that world. And so the problem, Shelley, that you have is, whilst it's okay to ask these questions and question the narrative, if you then pass that information on to your children, you're doing them not just a disservice, but in my opinion, like you're harming them. Like it's like abuse. So that's my problem, Shelley. That's my problem.
Way. In The Lord of the Rings, there are elves and there are hobbits, and there are dwarves.
Yep.
And there's the wizard Gandalf.
Obviously, you don't have to tell us that, Shelley. We're more familiar with that than the Bible these days.
And there are humans.
Yeah.
Now, what is happening in the Lord of the Rings trilogy is that it is saying that the time of the elves is ending and that the time of man is beginning. And I'll get
It's a sign.
to that in a bit. But let's just meet some of the other characters of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, shall we?
So I mentioned before that we have the elves.
She's outdoing herself today. I didn't know she was going to do this. I came to it cold. Sometimes I might preview what I'm going to, react to, because it's sensible to have a little look, isn't it? But I don't generally tend to. I like to react cold. It gives me more reasonable reactions, more real reactions. If I'm doing like a breakdown and a debunk, I might want to look at the things they're saying, so I get my things prepared to say, no, this is why it's not. And this, but here, she's just outdoing herself. I didn't ever expect that she might suggest that The Lord of the Rings is a historically accurate guide to what happened between and the world was created. It was formless in the Bible. If you change one of the words to a Hebrew rereading and take out the verb.
A lot of people consider this to be symbolic of the elder race, you could call them, or angels.
Angels? Why aren't they giants then? Because the Nephilim were giants. The giants in Lord of the Rings aren't pretty. What?
Then there are the goblins.
Goblins?
Who
They're
could
not.
be
They're orcs.
symbolic of fallen angels.
Aren't they orcs? Am I tripping?
But what I'm going to talk about today is not mere symbolism. Because there are people, especially, hundreds of years ago, that were persistent about saying that they knew that these creatures existed. So a lot of times when people are talking about Lord of the Rings lore, they're talking about symbolism. But my question is it symbolic, which it could be?
I'll tell you what, there are people out there that remind me of that. There are people out there that remind me of this sort of,
Or could it be possible that there were creatures that were like this and no symbolism is required? Then there are the orcs, which is a combination, kind of like a hybrid. So what you might think.
Is she saying the goblins? I'm sure that she showed us a picture of an orc there. I don't want to get too deep into the genetic difference between goblin and orc because it's fantasy fiction. So I don't need to.
As the Nephilim. And I showed you the hobbits and the dwarves, and then there are the Ents. Let me see if that's nothing with the Ents. Here we go.
And what's annoying as well is that she's saying it's symbolic of, it symbolises, because they're not, like, whilst they decided to symbolically make the orcs, just like the Nephilim, eat people and be baddies, they decided symbolically not to have them as giants, because why not? Like, it's just fucking weird. Like, why does some of it have to be symbolism and some of it is just real one-to-one? Because some of it doesn't fit. So now you're just shoehorning things in. And what you've done in your own free time is come up with a new I'll give you this, Shelley. It is only conjecture. You have said it's only conjecture. It's your new theory. We'll just call it a theory. A new theory that Lord of the Rings is a symbolic representation of the reality of pre-human history on Earth. Oh my God. Puff, puff, pass. She doesn't, if she doesn't understand that, yeah, then, like, I mean, I'd worry about her making my fucking dinner.
The Ents, gigantic trees.
You've got to hope one of her children can cook for the others, haven't you? You've got to hope, otherwise they're going malnourished. Something's going wrong here. Or then maybe I'm being rude, maybe I'm being out of order. The other thing I do think, because I do have a heart. I'm critiquing her work on the internet because she's putting it out there, yeah? Putting it out there. Look, pudding. But actually, she might be a really good mother. To be a good mother, make your children the food they like, but also make it nutritional. Get them in the routine. Love them. Clean them. You don't have to be a super scientist. You don't have to be Alfred Einstein in this job. Love them. That's your job. And doing all this other stuff, questioning the narrative and being their only source of information, being their teacher and guide, being their only teacher. I don't know if they have other people that help them do teaching. She's a homeschooler. Doing all that on top is extra and difficult. You're not required. Send them to school for that bit, for the learning of the maths and the grammar and the and all that, and then just love them and cook them nice food and be a mother. And mothers don't have to be the one that cooks these days. I'm not being sexist. Dad could do the cooking, you know what I mean? But Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying she can't do certain things just because she thinks that it's possible that orcs really existed at some point and ate all the humans because they were the children of... The orcs were the children of angels who had sex with women, and eventually God got cross with all this and just fucked it all off in a flood, which he talked about in the Bible, but didn't talk about specifically in this way, because we're left for us to sort of interpret that from an old rereading of a mistranslated or translated or retranslated scroll that even got edited out of the Bible because Enoch was a bit loop, and you can see why.
It almost looks like the troll. Oh, some of you had recommended that I watch Troll Hunter, and I did, and I loved it, and I've watched Troll Hunter several times now. But anyway, this kind of reminds me of one of the trolls in that movie because it really resembled a tree.
How have you got time to watch a movie several times, unless you're using it to placate your children? Like, let's just put Troll Hunter again, mommy needs to sleep. Like, do you know what I mean? How have you got time to do that? You've got, like, honestly now, I'm not making it up, she's got more than 3 children. I don't know the numbers, the total numbers. I don't know whether they escape and get to, you know, grow up and escape. But she to me, seems quite busy with her homeschool enterprise and misinformation campaign. But she's also got time to make this video and watch Troll Hunter 3 times.
The one part. So anyway, thanks for that recommendation. You guys are awesome.
Take my recommendation, Shelley. Take my recommendation and just stop this nonsense. Please stop it immediately. We're talking of lolcowery. Like, you know, I follow people on the internet that I find interesting and different for good reasons and bad sometimes. Dark Side Phil became one of those on my radar. I learned about this streamer who was doing everything wrong. I found a deep and interesting backstory covered by many different YouTubers, and it's still ongoing because he's still ongoing and doing his stuff. Like, this story is still ongoing. I've got other people that I want to bring to our attention as well as Shelley, and Lolcow is this term that's put out there because people like I just want to quickly cover this, just quickly actually while we're here, is that Chris Chan, and Chris Chan's the perfect example of this, I guess, because a lolcow in this context, a tiny image, I can't do it, I have to have a big image. I just have to have a big image these days. I need a big old image, that'll do. Chris Chan was definitely mentally divergent, definitely on the autistic spectrum, was making weird comics and playing with weird toys and stuff and doing weird stuff, like putting the information out there on the internet, like being an internet presence, but with this backstory of having mental deficiencies in learning and behaviour. So people used to go on the internet and sort of say, oh Chris, why don't you draw me a really cool picture, ha ha ha, and then he'd draw a picture and they, oh look at the picture he drew, you know, they're making a joke out, milking them for laughs. That's exactly it, yeah, milking them for laughs. So I saw that as a form of bullying. I didn't want to be part of that world. I'm not interested in bullying a mentally divergent person so that they do stupid things. I'll send them a nice message so they think I'm their friend. Hey Chris, why don't you, you know, make a tower out of Lego? Ha ha ha. Oh, I've made a tower out of Lego for my, because someone left me a comment on a video and look at my, you know, whatever it is. But it went quite far with Chris Chan, like different kinds of bullying and poking. But the sort of strange bullying where, oh, I like your comics, Chris. That's a really good comic, Chris. I like what you're doing there. Do me another one. Like, so you couldn't, Chris maybe didn't see it as bullying. Maybe he thought he had fans. It's confusing to him. But at the end of it, he did some bad crimes. Now, he was egged on by this internet gang in a way. And it's hard to say an internet gang. There's individuals that come and go. There's people that follow his story. There's people that write a comment. You know, it's not like we all get together in a gang and organise this. It's not like that. But people definitely milked Chris for laughs over the years. But he was also complicit in the process. And his caregivers were there to protect him or, you know, not from the process. This is the Wild West. This is the internet. So you have to hope that if someone is mentally divergent and they have caregivers, that they might not end up being milked for laughs on the internet, because people that might see it and regulate it in some way. You can't rely on the internet to not be pushing the boundaries of what's socially acceptable, because it's the fucking internet. Like, it's like saying, oh, I was at the pub the other day and this drunk person bumped into me. How dare they bump into me? You're at the pub, people are drunk, you get bumped into. It's the world. You have to be able to, you know, toughen up and navigate the world. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten by it sometimes. This is one of those stories where I felt it's sad that he's getting eaten by the internet, but he's also playing into it. There was a lad at my local pub who was mentally divergent. Up the road, there's a place where people, like supported living and whatever, and he's like, by all means, come to the pub. Don't act all weird and creepier though. Like when people were playing pool, sometimes he'd squeeze their bum. That's out of order. It doesn't matter if you're mentally divergent or not. There's social lines drawn. Like, no one's ever punched him, but he got told. Do you know what I mean? And like, we didn't egg him on or make a joke out of him. Let's put it like that at our local pub. But it's a wild world, and if he goes in someone else's pub, they don't know him. He might get punched for squeezing their bum. You don't know what. Like, you can't go around sexually assaulting people. Anyway, I'm getting off the beaten track here. My point is, in the end, what Chris Chan did, egged on by a certain person on the internet, a certain Isabella Janke, apparently, I don't know the facts, but egged on, ended up having sexual relations with his own mother who had dementia, and that's fucking horrific. And if that happened, we don't know things about his story that he has done that we don't know. So maybe he's a right wrong, and maybe he deserves it all. I don't know. That's where Lolcow comes from, though. I think Chris Chan is the flag bearer for Lolcow. Like, if I write Lolcow, I think Chris Chan is the Lolcow. Right, he's the first one that comes up. He's not the only one that comes up. Because there was a whole website, Kiwi Farms, dedicated to the online bullying of people in order to have a laugh at their expense. You know, to make fun of people on the internet requires that they do more stuff that you can laugh at. So that's the internet. Like, I'm saying it's probably socially negative to bully people. You know, bullying is wrong. Certainly if they are a victim because of their own inability to defend themselves, that's a problem. But it's a wide-ranging topic, isn't it? And so what I'm saying is that Darkside Phil is a lolcow, but he's far more self-aware, has the ability to change his destiny. People are not so much bullying him as keeping him to account or drawing attention to and drawing account of the things that he is doing wrong, so to speak, ethically. DSP gaming, like Darkside Phil is, I would say, see, this is weird. The weird thing about Lolcow, he's definitely a lolcow. People tease him and egg him on, and they're in the chat pretending to be his friend when they're not really his friend, and all that sort of stuff. He's getting trolled, and he's reacting to it, and his reaction is the milking, the lol. We get the laughs. Some people are not doing that though. Some people are just like making content about him, like I am now, and not specifically trying to milk him for laughs. I'm not milking the lolcow. I'm aware of him and I'm talking about him. Yeah, so like. But he's aware of it too. He's a grown-up. He's not mentally divergent. He's out there in the world, on the internet, doing things that have questionable ethics in order to benefit himself. And so Lolcow becomes this wider net now, doesn't it? And I'm happy to cast that net. And that's where we get someone like Shelley, who I could say, is a mother of like multiple children and is struggling and doing her best, and her best just frankly isn't good enough, but I don't see it just like that. I think she is so lolcow, right? Because the thing I'm not doing is milking her for laughs, but I don't know if that comment that she's reacting to was real or not, and in a way I think the people who are putting out all this bullshit, she's like self-milking lolcow. That's what she is. She's a self-milking lolcow. If she put away all this idiocy, all this bizarre stuff, like she's telling us that the Lord of the Rings was real history, if she's putting that away, then we don't have anything to laugh at. But instead she's bringing herself to the internet and saying really stupid things, so we do have something to laugh at, and it's fair game. In fact, what I'm doing is not just laughing at her, but there's lots of different detractors, there's lots of different people making lots of different content, but my angle on it is that bottom line is they're human beings. So if she ever watches it, I'd like to say, Shelley, you might have a good heart in there, be a good mother, just love your kids, like I said before. So I'll make content and there'll be an edge to it, but I'm not going to bully someone online. That's my line where I'm drawn. But that doesn't mean I can't talk about Shelley and lolcows, and it doesn't mean that I can't drag her over the coals for making these sort of videos. So let's try and finish it off. We're halfway through. If I ever do one of these videos where I like a reaction for me, 1 minute of video, 1 hour of talking. So I would like, but I think we've got to the meat of this, but let's see if we can push through.
And here are the elves at the end of the Return of the King movie, where they are going to sail off to Valinor, and they are going to leave Middle Earth to the man, because the time of man has...
Does she know that Tolkien based some of this on the Bible? Is that what happened? Hang on. Tolkien-based Lord of the Rings. I think he based some of it on the war, on the Second World War, or the First World War it would have been, the First World War. I'm just going to put on and let it fill it in for me. Tolkien was inspired most by the Wagner's Ring of the Nibelungs, the Ring Cycle. The German composer began work on libretto music for his cycle a century before Tolkien first introduced his rings to readers with the Hobbit. So Tolkien was inspired by different things. An array of influences. Beowulf. I've read that, not the old English version, but I've got a book where on one page is the old English and on the other page is the modern English. Actually, I should read it on stream sometime. I bet it's not copyright. It's really interesting. Beowulf. Obviously I didn't read all the old English. I just read the translation because I couldn't be asked with. But I saw it on the other page. I thought that's interesting. Christianity. You can't. I don't think this is very fair, isn't it? I don't think this is very fair. You can't have these as Tolkien's influences. Christianity's a big one there. And then tell me that you think that Lord of the Rings... Just please. Please.
Been ushered in. And so what I've been thinking is that what if it could have been something like this? What if even amidst all of the tohu vabohu, all of the destruction, what if some of the beings who ever lived there before, and a lot of people believe that it was angels who were living here during this gap period?
There's an interesting point. That is an interesting point. Some people say, right, God's got angels, created the earth, put angels on it. The end. Like, why do we need people and why do we need to die and heaven and hell and all that? Like, angels do what God says. They're good. They're beings. So and there is actually an answer to it in different religions. This is a theological question that someone with a basis in any of the major religions could attempt to answer and then discuss and debate with other people who have different maybe faiths and feelings, opinions. But also you could have an academic expert in theology who doesn't have to have any of those faiths or beliefs, that just knows the answers the way these people would explain it, right? So that is hello capital K. That is I'm doing this. that is quite. This woman has told us today that she thinks Lord of the Rings is probably real and should have been in the Bible. In between the first and second sentences, just put Lord of the Rings in there. It's a new theory. The funny thing is that the question that she's asking here about angels living on Earth is actually a real question that you could. I can't go on the mad tangent. I just can't. I'm not allowed to. We've done too many tangents. But angels lived on Earth before humans. I'm going to put Islam. Just put that. Life on Earth before Adam. Islamic question and answer. So there was the jinn. Allah created the angels on Wednesday, and then he created the jinn on Thursday, and then he created Adam on Friday. So it's answered in the Quran, okay? Or it's answered in the beliefs of Islam. That's a whole story that I'm not going to now in, because like to her it's like just as might as well be Lord of the Rings. But it's interesting, isn't it, that another Abrahamic religion with the same root as your religion, like Christianity is like the new iPhone. Like Islam and Judaism date back. Actually, Islam's like the new iPhone, isn't it? Islam came out the latest. Don't get me doing this. I'll get beheaded. But like, isn't like what like Abraham and the Jews? Then there was the Christians, and then 800 years after the birth of Jesus, there was Muhammad, peace be upon him. And then, so it's like iterations of and stories from, and they're all connected. It's not like the Bible is just the one. But
we don't know. Some people believe it was giants. We really honestly have no idea. At least, but we can't say for sure. We have lots of ideas.
So she doesn't have lots of ideas, so she says, we've got lots of ideas. I just showed you an alternative idea. She couldn't because she doesn't have any, because she doesn't know about these things. We're not going to dig deeply into that alternative idea. I think we've got one alternative idea is enough today, but like, she hasn't got any. And when she hasn't got any, she tells us there's lots. It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting way to play it.
But we can't say beyond speculation. But if some of the beings who live
Thankfully, we can't say beyond speculation, so it could be that
there during the gap theory persisted on and lived once verse 2 happened, or sorry, it would be verse 3, when God started creating the 7 days of creation and then the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve. Some of these other creatures, did they live on? Were there still some of them? And that is the question that I have. Another story, or another...
Oh, wait, another story. So let me answer that question that you have really quickly because it's easy. Did God create the world? Were there giants, trolls, orcs, elves? Then they got wiped out by God because they decided to create a race of giant, bastard, angel, human. Then, after that, God wiped it all out with a big flood, which was the Noah flood, which he talks about later in the Bible, but we're not going to mention that point. And then that was all... No. The answer's no.
Other show, and it's actually...
Right, we're going to hear the next one. I need to quickly pop to the bathroom. I'm going to let this run, so I'll be able to hear it at the same time because I've got the old Bluetooth. So let's let next bit run, and I'll be in the bathroom screaming, no! Don't let us say that on the internet without my chiming in.
Too, that I wouldn't recommend that you watch with children around, but I have been watching it just because I do enjoy the lore of it, just because it reminds me of all of this, and that is The Witcher. And The Witcher takes place also in a very similar era to Lord of the Rings, and a very similar era to what I would imagine as being that gap period. And yes, there are elves in The Witcher. There are dwarves in The Witcher. And like the era of the elves ending in Lord of the Rings and the era of man beginning, almost the same thing happens in The Witcher. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but something transpires that causes something called the conjunction of the spheres. And what that basically means, to me at least, is that it's like a rip in time and space, and that it opened up some sort of dimensional portal. And what ends up happening after this conjunction of the spheres in this time of The Witcher is humans then enter their world.
Right, yeah. Oh my God.
And again, the elves start receding. They start playing less of...
No, don't adverts me. How many adverts does she manage to squeeze into her videos? This is why she's doing this, is she's getting money for it.
Actually, they're killed off by the humans. And the humans take the larger role. And so I keep seeing that theme in my mind of what could have happened before man started to have dominion over the earth. So if it is possible that something like that were to happen, it would really make a lot of sense.
It would make a lot of sense to her. And this might be clutching at straws, because of course, if you're a creationist, you're not allowed to have evolution, are you? But it would make more sense to her that before us humans, there was entire civilizations of elves and orcs and giants and fairies. All of that. I don't know why she's not brought Harry Potter into this yet, to be honest, but we've gone for Lord of the Rings and The Witcher. And they seem to support each other, don't they? Lord of the Rings and The Witcher. So, probably better than evolution. Probably go for that. What about Jurassic Park? Are we going to talk about... No, we're not having Jurassic Park today. Thank you. We're watching Lord of the Rings and The Witcher. So...
That these, now... if we are being told any truth at all with our history, which we don't know. We don't even know that we're on the right timeline. We don't.
Whoa, she just lets the little nuggets drop. I have to keep stopping it. We don't know we're on the right timeline. We don't know if we're telling the truth with our history. Today, I'm going to try and keep our video succinct enough so that we can roll into that being said afterwards. That's nice of me, isn't it? So I can't just stop that and just say that, you know, every time she says, you don't know if history is true, the end, all of everything you like. I have to keep reminding us that she's a homeschooler. She teaches her children from home. And one of the things she teaches them is that history, you can't really, all bollocks. Therefore, she doesn't even have to bloody teach it, does she? Come on, Shelley, come on.
Know a whole lot, but if anything that we are being taught regarding mythology of different cultures, regarding folklore, the hieroglyphics that we look at, the artwork of different cultures, if any of that is true, we know that there are definitely stories of what we might call fairy folk worldwide. And I have to just point out that fairy folk are very different than what I would call hybrids.
Right. So we really could do with a second video on this, because I thought today's video, because her video is Gap Theory. If I just scroll down here, you'll be able to see. Her video is called Gap Theory, Did Elves and Fairies Exist? So I did a thumbnail with a fairy. You know, I'm more on the fairy side of things, but she's only just started to talk about fairies in the last 10 minutes of her video, which is a shame because fairy folk is a whole big subject. Like in Ireland, people still, honestly, to this day, you'll still find people who believe in fairy folk in Ireland. There's a rich culture of stories and fairy stories for that from there. In Europe, we've also got Hans Christian Andersen fairy stories. There's a different reason for compiling them, and they came from different places. You've also then got, like she said, different kinds of historical mythology, and then she's also connected it with Egyptian hieroglyphs. Just throw them in there. But all that is very different from what she calls hybrids, and hybrids are what we've been talking about for the whole video. So we will now finish with 10 minutes. Hopefully I can let it run for not too much longer than, I'm going to keep stopping it all fucking time. I don't want to stop it. I just want to let this last bit roll, and maybe we have to do a part 2 that's about fairies, because it's not my fault that she didn't talk about fairies.
Like
but now
mermaids
she's gonna.
And centaurs, satyrs, minotaurs. I don't know if there's a name for them, but like those dog-headed beings, like Anubis in Egyptian mythology. Those are something that are completely different. I think that those were born more from the Watchers. We'll just say sinning against the animals.
She's gonna have a right laugh on her hands when she finds out about Doggerland. Doggerland. If I just put Doggerland, yeah. Doggerland was a real place. It was between the UK and France, and it was like an island nation, I suppose, that's now lost to the sea, Doggerland. And there were people in the UK that believed dog-headed people lived there, because it was called Doggerland. They believed dog-headed people lived there, and because it was lost to the sea and it became a myth, and like, Shelley would say, right, in that case, dog-headed people, probably real.
Into that in a future video. I don't think that's what this is. I'm speaking specifically of fairy folk and just the worldwide, and again, I'm going back into that whole worldwide scenario of cultures that have stories of the same types of beings with different names, of course, with different mannerisms, but they're also alike in so many ways. Now, I certainly wouldn't consider giants to be a fairy folk, but I do believe that there is a very distinct possibility that there were giants, really, really gigantic giants during.
Okay, no, there's not. No possibility of that. I can explain very clearly why. I've done an episode on it, so on the Super Chuffer channel, if you just, maybe it's on lives, and then you search for giants, for example. Oh, Giant Jesus shortlist is coming up, but they're giants, Tartaria, pyramids, etc. Featuring Michelle Gibson, that one featured Michelle Gibson. We did a bit on Michelle Gibson there, so someone was asking about Michelle earlier. We looked at it. What we looked at and discovered is that you could have probably had, I'll tell you what you could have probably had. I mean, that's a bit of a graphic image. I don't like her choice of. It's a picture of a spiked soldier, so it might not be that bad. But YouTube's being really harsh about stuff like that recently, so maybe that'll get us in trouble. I don't know. I've drawn attention to it now, which was foolish. But someone like a bit of a big chuffer, there's a limit. There's a limit. You might have had Neanderthals with slightly different biology, slightly bigger, you know, but there's a limit. And the limit is that under certain amounts of pressure, liquid dynamics, fluid dynamics exist in our bodies. Your heart has to pump the blood up to your brain. Your brain is at a certain height, and the taller you are, the further up it is, and the bigger and longer those vessels are. But the fluid has to be under more pressure, because it's got to get up to that height, and so your heart has to increase in size. And there's a limit on how big your heart can be versus the narrow, or you know, the size of your blood vessels, the amount of oxygen that has to pump, mainly for the brain, up to the brain and around the rest of the body. And then you've got other problems like leverage, bones, muscles. They don't all work. Just increase the size, it all just works. You can't just say, for physics purposes, let's just increase the size of the human body 10 times, then you're done. That you make that person exist and they die immediately because their bones snap off their ligaments, and they break their bones as they fall, and then they can't even pump the blood around their body properly, because, you know, just exponentially growing everything in the human body leads to a biological impossibility. So that's giants for you.
During the time period of the gap theory, so I am going to include them here.
And what a really foolish use of a really terrible picture that has no, but like someone with a machine gun fighting a giant, and the use of the carnage. I tried to now sanitize it because I don't want it to ruin our channel, but
it does shed some light on Genesis 6 when it says there were giants on the earth in those days and also after that.
What? The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward were the sons of gods, where the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. It actually says that in the Bible. I thought they eradicated it when they took out Enoch. They were the heroes of old men of renown. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil. The Lord regretted he had made human beings on the earth. His heart was deeply troubled, so the Lord said, I'll wipe them from the face of the earth, the human race I've created, and with them all the animals, all the birds and creatures that move along the ground. But I regret that I've made them. Noah I find favour. So this is Noah in the flood. New International Version. Is that what it really... Genesis 6:4, that's what I'm looking at. Seems a bit heavy, doesn't it? I don't have to believe it, do I? So Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were in the earth. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Wow. I suppose it must be really difficult to want to believe the words of the Bible word for word, and then to have to reason that out with your knowledge of the world, and then to teach it to your children. That must be really difficult.
It almost makes it sound like there were already giants there, and then when the sons of God went into the daughters of men and had children.
See, because for one thing, if you're just stupid, yeah, and like they're telling you this stuff, like you're going to church and you're lapping it up because you're not that smart. Like, that's one thing, isn't it? Like, I actually feel kind of sorry, sad, pity here in, like, again, the Lolcow thing comes into it. You end up pitying the Lolcow at some point, don't you? Like, I feel a bit sad in a way for Shelley that she's been taught all this nonsense, and then, like, she just believed it, and, like, it's part of her. But the thing that I then find a bit, that's one thing. That's one thing. I think you need somebody to help save you from this dangerous misinformation. The other side of it is then to teach it to your children and make a YouTube channel about it, to champion it. That's another thing entirely. And I think the people that champion it at the top end of the church probably do it because they're smart and they leverage it for themselves in some way. Whereas I think she's not doing it for that reason. She is getting some money out of it. She's leveraging this for herself in some way, but not in the same way as the church have got control over you. Not in that way. Not in the money. Like, the church makes a lot of money. Shelley doesn't. She makes some off this, which is abhorrent, really, isn't it? Sharing this nonsense, but
with them, then there were more giants or more Nephilim.
give her some psychedelics and see what she comes up with.
But it really does make you think that could there have already been giants there, and could they have been left over from the previous age?
No.
And that's something else that I was thinking about, is when Jesus says to his disciples, or is it to his disciples? I can't even think.
She can't remember the actual Bible. She got it here, though.
The coffee for good reason. But anyway, I needed that. So it is to his disciples, and Jesus is saying, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age.
And also, there's giants. He said, I distinctly remember him saying something about giants.
And so that's something else that I've been thinking about.
Jesus wasn't he? Jesus was like, love thy neighbour, instilling in them the fear of God with giants. Wasn't he that? Love thy neighbour. Jesus, I remember him saying on the Mount, the Sermon on the Mount, blessed be, was it the meek, for they shall see God. Blessed be the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And also, watch out for the orcs, they'll tear your head off. I'm sure that was Jesus as well, wasn't it? He was famous for both of those things.
Age. Does that mean that there...
Why didn't he tell us? Why didn't Jesus just sort it out and tell us? Why wasn't he always going on about it? Do you remember the time that God fucking wiped everyone off the earth? You should behave. It's not like, be good to thy neighbour because, trust in me and have faith. It's be good to thy neighbour because orcs used to come and eat you and God saved you from that. They'd make a bigger thing of it. It would be like the slogan, wouldn't it? Aren't giants Bible canon? Apparently so. Apparently so, capital K. Giants, I'm now learning, are probably Bible canon. I don't know what to think anymore. What I could think, I suppose one of the things I could think is that the Bible and the Lord of the Rings probably have about the same historical... But no, they don't actually. The Bible has more historical... Let's be fair, the Bible has more historical weight than Lord of the Rings. I think. Shelley's saying that they're probably about the same. We're coming to a similar conclusion here. Probably don't get your sex tips out the Beano. Don't get your history tips out the Bible. Don't get your history tips out of Lord of the Rings. Don't get your sex tips out the Beano. Go to the right source for the right impression of the information. Probably that. Question the narrative. We're on the same page in a way.
More than one age. And that is just another question that I have.
You don't have the Beano in America, do you? The Beano, which is child's comic for kids. Don't get your sex tips out of the Beano.
So
Goliath. Oh look, capital K. You're right. Yeah, and David and Goliath. Yeah, and Goliath, like, he got his head knocked off by a stone, just one little stone. Yeah, I used to remember David and Goliath. Yeah, that's true. So it's true. But also, I would say you could probably have Goliaths. You can probably have, like, 'cause now we've got humans that are great big chuffers. You can have great big chuffers, and then people could maybe spin those stories out of proportion because he was such a big chuffer. And then he was 10 foot, 12 foot, 100 foot tall. But I don't actually believe that Goliath could physically exist as like a real... And if he did, he'd have been ineffective on the battlefield because he'd have been prone to bone breakage much, much easier than any of the other soldiers.
Giants have been something that was kind of left over from the previous age. Then we also have trolls, which I just talked about, and I believe that it is very possible that something akin to those beings may have survived from that time period.
Something akin to a troll may have survived from that time period. It's possible. Although it's not really possible though, is it? Like, wouldn't there be in the fossil record, wouldn't there be like, why would we pretend not that they exist? Why would we hide, and why would they not just be in the record? Like everything else, all the other animals that we found and discovered, and they all go in the books, they all go on the telly. Jurassic Park. Dinosaurs even. Like, dinosaurs are quite a fantastic idea. Just if you said to someone, there used to be this giant lizard monster on, like, it evolved into a bird and then that's what we've got now. You'd be like, did it bollocks? And then you watch Jurassic Park and you're like, oh, that's the facts. No, forget Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is based on scientific literature, based on a fossil record, based on carbon dating. It's based on, it's not Jurassic Park is our source of the information, just like Lord of the Rings isn't. But, why would we then find or not find evidence of trolls? If we did find them, why would we obscure them? It just seems weird, doesn't it? None of this stuff, the conjecture from biblical times, because bear in mind, I'm saying that the people who wrote the Bible probably didn't know. They had to make up some shit. And it turns out the shit they made up doesn't fit, because now we've got ways of finding evidence. And they didn't know we would have those ways of finding evidence all the way back then. So they had to make it up. And people around that time just said, all right then, fine, we can't even know. No one can ever know. Shelley said it to us today, you can never really know. Well, not really, but kind of we can.
Then there are stories of sylphs, and again, they have different names. And I'm hoping to go deeper into the fairy folk in a future video, but it's something that I really need.
Why did you advertise today's video as elves, fairies? That's not fair. That's not fair. She clickbaited me. I clickbaited you in response. I thought we were going to talk elves and fairies today. We didn't. Cheeky.
Research more if I'm going to talk about each one individually. This is just kind of touching on the possibilities. This is supposedly a real picture of a gnome, quote, real picture of a gnome, but there are stories of gnomes.
Wait.
Quote,
wait.
just kind
I'm
of
sorry,
touching
what?
on the possibilities. This is supposedly a real picture of a gnome, quote.
So, I'm glad she at least brought us this. That satisfies my urge for elves and pixies. If this is where we're going with it. This is a real picture of a gnome.
Just kind of touching on the possibilities. This is supposedly a real picture of a gnome, quote, real picture of a gnome, but there are stories of gnomes.
I knew I was going to get gold out of her today.
This is a brownie, which actually I have a very, very interesting quote, and now is a good time to bring that in. So first of all, a lot of times people will think that it's only the lower class people or maybe the less intelligent people who have had these sightings of fairy folk.
People might think it's the lower class or less intelligent people who have seen fairy folk.
But that really wasn't the case.
Nope.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who, if you might know him as the author of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, he was an avid believer in fairies.
Was he? Was the author of Sherlock Holmes an avid believer in fairies? Was he? There's my first question in the narrative. I don't know. I'm not going to wormhole that now. I'm going to ask, was he? Please show me some evidence. And two, right, if he was, why does that prove anything? He could have been high on heroin for all I know. Shit, you shouldn't say that. That's going to get us advertiser defriended. Like my videos, they go, oh, this is going well. And then they YouTube does something to them and they stop getting suggestions. People can't see them anymore, so they can't click them anymore and they stop getting views. And something happens, and it probably is me saying things like that.
Was Sir Walter Scott, who wrote Ivanhoe. And
bear in mind, they're all people who make up stories. These people that she's suggesting make up interesting stories that are probably the truth. The other stuff they did, Sherlock Holmes and Ivanhoe, just stories, but the thing about the brownies, that's the truth. So you've got to be able to switch on to navigate this sort of stuff like Shelley does.
Right here, Robert Louis Stevenson. Now, he wrote Treasure Island, but he also wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I'm reading an excerpt out of Steve Quayle's book, Little Creatures. Okay, so this is from there, and it says, it's talking about Robert Louis Stevenson. Stevenson also claimed that his story idea and much of the plot for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde had been dictated to him by magical little creatures known as brownies. And this is a quote. For 2 days, I went about racking my brains for a plot of any sort. And on the second night, I dreamed the scene at the window and a scene afterward split in two, in which Hyde, pursued for some crime, took the powder and underwent the change in the presence of his pursuers. All the rest was made awake and consciously, although I think I can trace in much of it the manner of my brownies. The meaning of the tale is therefore mine, and had long pre-existed in my garden of Adonis, and tried one body after another in vain. Indeed, I do most of the morality, worse luck. And
He could be talking allegorically, because there was this idea that Jung, like when we talk about psychology, you have Freud. Like, I can't go to too many rabbit holes if you want to finish this in the next. We're easily going to finish before that being said. Hopefully, that's the plan today. The idea here is that Jung said, like Freud said, you were like your own closed computer. Like everything's in your head, and the things that happen to you and the way you perceive the world, it's built in your computer mind in your head. You know, like imagine a PC on its own, stood on a table. That's you. You've got a mind, and you know it's all going on in your brain. You're constructing it. And then Freud said, well, what if you network all the PCs like to the internet? And he didn't say this because they didn't have this analogy back then, but I'm saying it. You network all the PCs to the internet, and then you don't know, like you can't think everything on the internet at the same time. It's too much for your memory, but you can access little bits here and there. So ideas, for example. And so Jung suggested that we had a collective consciousness, and the reason he suggested it as well, or evidence or suggestion, or like, you know, question the narrative, whatever, was because we come up with similar ideas all over the world. You might have giants in different mythologies all around the world. It doesn't mean the giants everywhere. It just means human beings, the way their minds work, come up with the same stories. Why do they come up with the same stories? Well, we could be networked on a subconscious level into the consciousness. That's a theory that you could explore. It could be that just the way our brains are wired up comes to the same sort of answer because we think the same. It could be that. Like, there's different questions, but we're not having those conversations here. Because somebody who wrote a book, clearly a fiction book, some years ago, suggested that they had brownies whispering ideas to them. And that is probably more likely evidence in Shelley's world, in the world of homeschool your children. This is more likely to be a nugget of truth, to paraphrase a philism. That's the thing that you want to latch onto, draw out, and create a whole story around, instead of the way we think today. And why would you? Well, of course, because somebody once said in the 1800s this is where they got their ideas for their books.
My brownies have not a rudiment of what we call a conscience. Mine too.
How many adverts does she want to squeeze into one of these videos? Shelley, you're disgraceful.
Mind the characters. All that was given me was the matter of 3 scenes. So what he's referring to being given to him was given to him by his brownies. And the central idea of a voluntary change becoming involuntary. Will it be thought ungenerous, after I have been so liberally ladling out praise to my unseen collaborators, aka the brownies, if I here toss them over bound hand and foot into the arena of the critics? For the business of the powders, which so many have censured, is, I am relieved to say, not mine at all, but the brownies.
So what he could have said there, right, because he's talking allegorical, I think, right, what he's saying is that somebody gave him these ideas and it wasn't necessarily him, but he can't outwardly state whose ideas these are. So it might be, because back then, for example, women might not have been considered to be thoughtful members of society. They might have been considered to be lower than men. So maybe you couldn't say women gave me the ideas, because people say, oh, they'd be shit ideas coming from women. Or it might have been, I don't know, like people of a different culture that he knows, and instead of saying it maybe like if he'd said, oh, I've written this book in collaboration with my friend from Africa, it might have had like negative social connotations, and people might have said, oh, I don't want to hear from the African author, and like, you know, there could have been all these other reasons socially at the time that there could have been Nazis or anything, like, you don't know, like, and so he's saying in some way that he got his ideas from elsewhere, but he doesn't want to expose those people and those ideas.
So the whole idea of the powder in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde came to him from brownies.
Or you could believe that literally one person in the world has had contact with fairy folk. They whispered stories in his ear. He turned it into a book, exposed himself in an interview in public, and that's the real reality of history that we should now probably teach our children at homeschool.
Or at least that's what he claims. Anyway, so going back to some of the types. Now, this is a leprechaun. Now, I don't want you to think for 1 second.
Just she drops this different types. This is a leprechaun. So anyway, now
That
what?
I think that
I mentioned the Irish tradition. We should do a full video on it. She's not going to, despite having promised.
there are creatures that walk around in these merry little green jackets and top hats. What I am saying is that all of these fairy tales and legends are based on some truth. Now,
She's not saying that there are actual leprechauns walking around. She's just saying that all fairy tales and legends are based on some truth. Question the narrative. That's the name of her channel, is Question the Narrative. No, it's not. The channel's called There's No Place Like Home. And home is the place where you're forced to question the narrative with your mother instead of eating nice home-baked buns or some shit. I don't know what mothers do. My mum had to work every hour's godsend, like, you know. But she used to cook us food, and we used to eat it. Damn it, that was one of the features of being a mother and raising children. I remember being a kid. You know, I wonder what goes on at her house. How has she got the time to come up with all this? I'm repeating myself. I should shut up.
is the truth that there are little leprechauns guarding pots of gold at the end of rainbows? I wouldn't go that far to say that that's what I think that they are, but I would not ever say that they don't exist.
On the internet, in front of everyone, I wouldn't go so far as to say that leprechauns are definitely hiding pots of gold at the end of the rainbow, but I wouldn't also go so far as to say that they're not. So
There is something. There is some sort of creature that people are seeing. Now, this is actually, I just typed into DuckDuckGo a real photo of a fairy, just because I didn't want any of the, like...
Right, they don't let these people, they're not, she's in this box. I mean, some people, Google is an offence. Google is probably the world's best search engine, but it does have its failings. For some reason, some people don't want to use Google. I also use Ecosia. That's my search engine, Ecosia. It's not Google, but if I do photograph of a real fairy, there was a very famous set of photographs. They're very famous in the UK, at least. I don't know if they're famous everywhere, and I might not be finding the exact ones, but this is the same style. They were taken in the 1800s, I think. Very famous set of photographs. The Cottingley fairies. Now it wants me to log in. It can fuck off. This is the photograph. This is the actual thing. Very famous. And what happened was, like, this is the early genre of photography. Photography is early at this stage. This was 1917, and these ladies took photographs of their encounters with the fairy folk. And at the time, it was believed that they were real. Essentially, it was like somebody's photographed a fairy. Look, here's the evidence. And of course, yes, as Puff Puff Pass says in how come I don't use Google? I do use Google. I used it earlier for the Bible. I find Google is really good for some things, but it's really bad for other specific things. Like, in a way, Google will always serve me the most popular answer, and I don't always want the most popular answer. Like, for example, buttered toast always falls down, butter side down, yeah? So I might ask, when was the first time buttered toast was seen to have, let's ask that. When was the first time buttered toast was reported to fall butter side down? Yeah, this is just a silly thing. The observation was first made by Galileo Galilei. Google is brilliant. Galileo Galilei, apparently. I thought it was just going to go on about toast. Like, all these other articles here just go on about toast, but it's sometimes, because it's so popular to say, why does it, not who asked does it, you get the wrong answer. That's why I don't use Google, but apparently Google's brilliant. And sometimes I want the variety that comes with Ecosia, but really as well, Ecosia plants trees. While I'm browsing, it's planting trees. It's like a green version. It's an ecological version. And if I can do something better for the world just simply by browsing, then that's good. I'll do that. That's why I use Ecosia. But if I want it, if I want to be specific, sometimes I might ask Google, because apparently it's much, much better. The Cottingley fairies here, look, they're not real. We know they're not real. It was fake. Come on. Nowadays, if someone took a photo of themselves playing with a fairy in their garden, you would assume it to be fake rather than fairies to be real, yeah? But back then in 1917, there were some conjecture. Some people believed that these photographs were real. It was not a cut and dried, it wasn't a cut and dried thing. There were people debating it. Today, there are still people making photographs of realistic looking fairies, and today they've got much more sophisticated equipment. So for me, I'm not going to go down the road of this proves fairies. Let's see what Shelley's got to say.
CGI fairies. I just wanted something that was realistic, and I found this to be interesting. Now, obviously, I think this is CGI too, but
oh, thank God.
A lot of times
because she thinks that's CGI, right? But it's kind of annoying that she's prepared to say that, because so many of her videos in the past, and we've looked at a few of them, like this one's one of my favourite, look, were these the real... What she does in this video, talking to Google and everything, DuckDuckGo and Google, is she goes through Google Images, and a lot of these images are from or found on Google, whether they're... like, this one's one of my favourites. This is... On the right, it's a church, and it's actually by a famous architect. Is it Gaudi? I've forgotten off the top of my head now. I think it's Gaudi. And on the left is a termite mound, and she suggests that the termite mound could be a melted church, or that this church is a melted church that's half... And the reason the church is half finished is because it is half finished. He died before it was finished, and they, I'm repeating myself from a different video now. Yeah, it's Gaudi's church, La Sagrada Familia, and there it is, and it's still being built and all this business. Like, the fact that she's got an old photograph on the internet, for her, is absolutely fine to make a whole video out of it.
And here's just another example. We have this beautiful building over here, and then we take a look at this, and this certainly looks like it was a building. I don't know how big it was, though. If you look at the size of this, to me, this actually looks like it was very small.
I mean, don't tell me about lolcows, and let's not include Shelley. There she is suggesting that a termite mound is in some relation a melted building, and so is Gaudi's church. Let's not forget Shelley from the Shelley deserves her place.
But that does...
Shelley deserves her place in Lolcow history. Let me bring her to the table.
when I try to type in things like fairies, it's very pretty, but digital art. It's not something that actually looks realistic. So I just pulled this up because it's not something that you would typically think of as a fairy, but it's pretty fanciful. But you get the idea.
That's right, Puff Puff Pass, save her kids. I think like it constitutes abuse.
That we don't know what sort of things during that gap period would have been here. And the point is that we don't know what could have survived the desolation.
Well, we do kind of know what was here, don't we? Because we've got the fossil record, and we've got all of like evolution and history and DNA, and like some of the animals that exist today, like crocodiles and sharks, existed a long time ago. Like we do know.
And so it would make a lot of sense that
it is possible that even further back, you know, talking millions and millions of years, that there could have been things that existed and went into extinction and then were processed by the earth to the point where we have no record of them. It is possible, I suppose. I'll open the door to that possibility.
People of bygone eras would have seen these things more than we do now, because we don't know how long any of these beings lived. We don't know anything about that. But it would make sense that if there was a remnant that was left over, that over time they would start dying off, and of course we would start seeing them less and less. And
why?
Unfortunately,
why? She's talking about a remnant left over, not specifically pixies, but in terms of the Nephilim and those giants, a remnant left over of a super being that could demolish. And like the reason they used to eat the humans is because they ran out of food, because they had such voracious appetites, and that was one of the reasons we had to kill them off, because they ate everything. Like this super being that could, like, you know, talking of mythological creatures again, like these fairies or whatever, they've got like these mythical Why do they have to die out? And if they did, wouldn't we have just like the dodo, which was a real thing that died out? Wouldn't we just have record of it and say, well, there it was, it died out? It's not mythical or anything. It's not invisible to us. Like you'd have these like skeletal fairies that you'd found in the woodlands. You know, we'd have evidences of them. Surely.
Personally, I have to say that I think we've reached.
Or if they overlapped and escaped that she's saying some of them didn't get killed by the giant flood. Then I've got to reiterate that. Sorry, Shelley. There would be a remnant, she said. So God isn't complete in his cleanse. God is not completely cleansing the earth. There might have been a remnant, and those remnants, when the world took fruit again and Noah and all the animals came off the ark, you know, there might have been one sinister remnant. That remnant would have just still existed today, wouldn't it? Why would it have to go extinct? It would be a remnant of a super being that God tried to exterminate, and it's still alive today. And you know, you go on to Christmas Island and there's crabs and there's fairies. Like we would take it for granted. We wouldn't call them like mythical fairies. We just call them like, you know, Komodo dragons or something, or whatever they are. Like there are things like that, like crocodiles that are like remnants from pre-historical evolution in a way, like dirty. Like, or I suppose we'd talk about mitochondria, wouldn't we? Or we'd talk about viruses or other, you know, microbial life forms that still exist today that didn't end up evolving, that were a link on the evolutionary chain. There'd be those sort of remnants. It could make an entire conversation and video. I'm a bit disappointed she only brought up the pixies at the end, because that was the whole point, you little chuffer. Shelley, you chuffer. She's hashtagged it Elves Fairies Reset. Have you ever thought about what the gap period might have been like? Who lived here? What happened? Did any of the beings survive and enter the age of man? Lots of questions, lots of reasons to continue questioning the narrative. The book links. The book links are Occult Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation, which is interesting, and Little Creatures, The Gates of Hell Are Opening. If you like what I do, you can support me on Patreon. You can support me on Patreon, but I'm going to have to revise it and rejig it and make it worth it for you. That will happen in the future. You can drop me a tip, a like, a subscribe. I'm aiming for monetization, 1,000 subs, member goals, you know, all that sort of stuff. Creating good content on the way for it to be valuable, so that people might want to help us to do it. That's what I'm aiming for. I want to make this into my job and my full-time career. And for that, it needs to be financially viable as well as loads and loads of fun. So at the moment, it's just loads and loads of fun. But if we can get a sponsor, if we can hit numbers and get a sponsor, that's where I'm trying to take it. So let's finish off with Shelley.
That was left over, that over time, they would start dying off. And of course, we would start seeing them less and less. And unfortunately, I have to say that I think we've reached a point in time where, for a lot of us, they could be standing right in front of us and we wouldn't look up from our phones long enough to even notice that they were there. So that's something else. So are they hiding more? Are we not noticing them? Or are they just not around as much because they're...
Right. You might spend time with your children a lot, Shelley. You do obviously spend a lot of time with your children. So I'm guessing that those people she refers to that won't look up from their phones are her own children, but she might be referring to the rest of society. And I understand that on a day-to-day basis, you might think people are paying less attention to the natural world, therefore pixies could be hiding there. But on the other side of that coin is all the technology that goes into making your phone. Also, they're using it to make things like satellites and measurement devices, cameras, automated cameras, like natural trail cameras that don't look like cameras, that animals just come out and be around. And throughout all of this, still not capturing the pixies. So it's not that people are just looking at their phones more, paying less attention. In actual fact, we're covering the natural world and the recording of it in far greater detail than ever before. Plus, there's quite a lot more people out there looking around, and they've got a lot more, like, we've got boats and planes and all sorts of devices to help us navigate the world so we can get into more extreme places. So there are fewer and fewer places for these elves and pixies to hide. They're certainly not at the Antarctic. We're down there having a look. You know, they're certainly not in the Amazon rainforest. We're in there having a look. They're certainly not. And there's lots of rainforest that is uncharted, but they're flying satellites over it, and they're in there having a look. Trust me. And like, you know, there are fewer and fewer pockets. Maybe I will concede at the depths of the oceans, maybe some of the mountain ranges, and maybe in some dark hearts of the rainforests, there could be unknown things still yet to discover. But whether they would turn out to be secret races of giants, pixies, elves. I'm going to veer on the side of no. I'm going to go with what all the medical science and stuff that we found, not medical, sorry, just, scientific evolution, all that, all the stuff, all the evidences that we found so far, all the ways that the great minds of our generations on generations now have put these ideas together. We've left mythology behind a long time ago, and we certainly don't need to return to it. And if we did find something that would appear like maybe a giant or an elf, then we wouldn't say, right, that's mythology, therefore all of mythology could be real. What we'd do is we'd say, right, we didn't previously factor in a growth of a being this size, but in the same way as you have pygmies out in the Amazon, it turned out this tribe, through genetic rebreeding and interbreeding, became very, very big, and we'd explain it in scientific terms and we'd add it to the list. We wouldn't pretend it didn't exist, we'd accept it existed, and we wouldn't explain it as being mythology, we'd add it into the list. So it wouldn't mean everything mythology existed therefore as well. So, yeah.
Dying off. I don't know. Or were they never here to begin with? And this
Probably
is just something that I am, talking about on my channel, and something that I'm speculating about that never existed.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm going to make a bet though and say that I am pretty sure that at least some of the things that I have talked about, again, are rooted in truth, because that is what we find.
It's like 50-50, isn't it, really? Is everything she said bollocks, or is it the bang truth? It's kind of 50-50, but I'd make a bet that it's the truth. Nice summing up there.
Over time, is that, again, I'm going to say it, folklore, fairy tales, legends, they are rooted in truth.
The nugget of truth. She watches Dark Side Phil as well. She's got Phil DNA.
That's all that I have for you today. If you like this
That's
video,
all you've got for us
a
any day, love. That's the best you've ever had for us, to be honest. To be honest, that is one of the best she's ever done. The Lord of the Rings, let me remind you, the Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, it's all rooted in truth. If you didn't realise, then come and get your schooling. Who do you think you're fooling? I see through your hype, and I bet your mark is useless. That's why I count my blessings. Ain't got no time for messing. Poor woman. Poor woman. So thanks for being with me today. Thank you, No Place Like Home, for your wonderful video, which I used to create content that I think has slightly more value. I am being mean and I am like poking fun at Shelley, but I also do want to, at the end of all of this, I want to say there are people out there that have been confused by this bollocks. I do make content for them to open their eyes with. I'm not just here to throw mud at Shelley, I'm also here to sort of say, if you know anyone that believes in any of this shit, because there are other conspiracy theories, we've looked at some, they bring some other ideas to the table. There's the flat earth up there behind her. I wonder what these people would think when they watch my content, and at the end I'd say to them, look, these are just funny ideas, and there's a reason people give you funny ideas. It's because they want you to buy shit. Like, they haven't got as much money. Like, she's not living like Elon Musk. She's not like, it's not a big clever scam. It's not even Shelley's being scammed by other people, like, because ultimately you could end up going and buying the books. I've moved off the picture now, but where was it? Here. We could go, anyone could be fooled into buying some of these books and supporting some of these people. People need money in this world. It's quite a tough world. And so there are people out there that will tell you all kinds of shit just to get your money. That's what it really comes down to. And I think the sad thing about it is that these are people that could have good, like Shelley could have a good heart. She might just be confused. Phil, we think, is a bit more sinister. I think he's scamming us for money, don't we? She doesn't ask for as much money. She's making it through the YouTube, and she's gaining social status. She doesn't have a social circle really like the rest of us, because she's homeschooling her kids. So she hasn't, like, while normal people who have their kids at school and they go to work and they socialise with the people at work, she's not doing that. While normal people are socialising with people, of a weekend or whatever, she's not doing that. She doesn't even have the same ideas as them. The only people she'll really socialise with are the friends she's got online and maybe some people from the church. Like, limited social circles, and within those circles she can gain status through this sort of endeavor as well. So there's something in that, which is a sad thing in a way for Shelley. So what I really, if anyone's watching this and they're thinking, oh, he's being mean about the ideas, and I like those ideas, I'm down with those ideas, I think they could be good ideas, I'd say, look, they're silly ideas, people are trying to confuse you. I've got different ideas, and I equally think that the truth and the light comes through what I'm saying. And when they talk about certain, like we talked about at the very start of the episode, you can have spirituality. I'll agree with you, I'll be spiritual. I'm not going to say, oh, God definitely said this and I have to cut my beard this way. I'm going to say, okay, generally God, we are good to each other, we help each other, we're kind to each other, we get through life this way. God is in that help, in that kindness, God is in that love. So we're to share love. That's a good premise. I'll be down with that. So forget all this other rubbish. My love that I can share to people like Shelley and the people she confuses is the light and the truth. Jesus said, I am the light and the way. Shelley would understand that. The light and the way and the truth. And that is to put down this nonsense, even to the point where we don't even discuss about what it said in Genesis and Adam and Eve and all that rubbish. Sorry, all that stuff. We don't even get into the details of that. Don't worry about it. I'll tell you what it doesn't do. It doesn't serve you on a day-to-day basis. You might serve the Lord, but it doesn't serve you on a day-to-day basis. It causes you to be disenfranchised with the world, to not understand things properly, to be vulnerable to other people's weird ideas, and they're just trying to prey on you, okay? So I'm going to help. I'm going to say, reach out hands. I'm going to say, if you are confused by this nonsense, don't worry. Don't worry. Put it aside. Take a break from it. Even if you want to go back to it, take a break from it. If you are watching too much conspiracy content, if you're down that rabbit hole, take a break from it. See how it feels to have that break. Maybe you can have some other ideas. Maybe there are some people out there who really would lead you for honourable purposes and not for their own dirty gain. So yeah, that's the sort of note that I'd like to finish on. Because like I said, I said it today as well, I'm not an internet bully. But people put themselves on the chopping block and knives are raised. But I'm not an internet bully. At the same time, I'm finding my way on the internet as a live streamer. I really enjoy the content we make about psychology. I see what we're doing here as psychological, as part of a psychology conversation. These are people, how they think, how they feel, and how they behave. So I think it all fits in a general realm of content that we're making. So I'll keep at it. Thanks for being here. At the end of every episode, I finish with the same sign-off line, which is that if you can't be good, you're naughty. And generally, though, I think people are good. I think you are good. But if you can't be good, you're naughty. You're naughty. And generally, though, I think people are good. I think you are good. But if you can't be good, you're naughty. You're naughty. And generally,